When Samantha said in front of all the guests that I wouldn't last a single year on my own, that I was nothing without this family, something inside of me broke, but not in the way she expected. There were no tears. There was no shouting. There was only a cold clarity, like when ice cracks and you can see the dark water underneath. The guests were laughing. A few were recording on their phones, and I just smiled. That smile must have looked strange to them, because a few of them stopped laughing. I looked my daughter-in-law straight in the eye and said with a calmness I didn't even know I possessed, "Why wait a year? I'm leaving now." The silence that followed was so heavy I could feel it in my bones. I turned around, grabbed my purse from the cream-colored sofa, and walked toward the door without looking back. Every step sounded like a thunderclap in that room, full of people who suddenly didn't know where to look. That night, as I packed my things in the room that had been mine for 3 years, my phone vibrated. It was a text from Michael, my son. When I read it, the air left my lungs. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me tell you how I got to that moment, because every humiliation has a beginning, and mine started long before that party. 3 years ago, I was 62. My husband had died over 20 years earlier, when Michael was barely 11. I raised that boy alone, working whatever jobs I could, sacrificing my own dreams so he could go to college, so he could have what I never had. I had studied business administration. I'd worked at a major firm before Michael was born. But when I was widowed, I had to choose between my career and my son. I chose my son. I always would. Michael grew up, became a professional, successful. I was so proud. And then he met Samantha. She appeared in our lives like a storm disguised as a breeze. Pretty, elegant, with that way of speaking that makes people think you know more than you really do. At first, I found her charming. How foolish I was. Michael was dazzled. They were married 6 months after they met. The wedding was in a huge ballroom, with flowers that cost more than $10,000. Samantha insisted on every detail. I paid for part of that wedding with the savings I had put away. I thought I was investing in my son's happiness. After the wedding, Michael asked me to move in with them. "Mom, the house is huge. It doesn't make sense for you to live alone in that tiny apartment. Besides, Samantha and I want you to be close." That's what he told me, with that smile that always melted my heart. I agreed. I sold my apartment, that place where I had raised Michael, where every corner held a memory, and I moved into their new house, a modern build in an exclusive neighborhood, with a yard and a pool. My room was on the ground floor, far from the master bedroom. "So you can have your privacy, Eleanor," Samantha told me with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. I should have seen it then. I should have noticed how she called me by my first name and not Mom, how her hugs were stiff, how her compliments always had a sharp, hidden barb. "That's a lovely dress, Eleanor, so age-appropriate. Thanks for helping with the cleaning. It's good for you to stay active." Little things that dig in like splinters. The first few months were tolerable. I tried to help without being in the way. I cooked sometimes, kept my space tidy, went for walks so I wouldn't be in the middle of things. But Samantha had a way of making me feel like everything I did was wrong. If I cooked, she'd order takeout. "I don't want you to get tired, Eleanor." If I offered to clean, she'd hire a cleaning service. A woman your age shouldn't be scrubbing floors. Every gesture of help was rejected with a poisonous kindness. And Michael saw nothing, or didn't want to see. When I tried to talk to him, he always had an excuse. "Mom, Samantha is just worried about you. You're overreacting. She adores you." Little by little, I became smaller in that house, more invisible. I ate alone most of the time because they always had plans. I stayed in my room when they had guests, because Samantha said I needed to rest. The house was enormous, luxurious, full of expensive furniture and modern art, but I felt like an intruder in a museum. Then the party started. Samantha loved hosting events. Every month there was a reason. Birthdays, anniversaries, celebrating some achievement of Michael's at his job. The house would fill with young, elegant, loud people. I usually stayed in my room, but sometimes Samantha would insist I come down. "Eleanor, come say hello to our friends." And I would go down, put on my best ivory or dusty rose dress, try to smile, but I always felt the stares. The conversations that would stop when I entered. the muffled giggles. One time I heard one of Samantha's friends whisper, "Poor Michael, having to support his mother at this stage." Samantha laughed. She didn't say a word to defend me. That night I cried in my room, with the pillow against my mouth so no one would hear me. But the next day I got up, dried my tears, and carried on. Because that's what you do when you love your son. You endure. Michael's birthday party was different from the start. Samantha had been planning it for weeks, talking about the guest list, the catering, the decorations. She hired a professional event planner who turned our backyard into something out of a magazine. Hanging lights, tables with champagne-colored linens, floral arrangements that must have cost thousands of dollars. Everything perfect, everything flawless. Samantha was wearing an emerald green dress that fit as if it had been painted onto her body. I put on my pearl gray dress, the most elegant one I had. I did my makeup carefully, fixed my hair. I wanted to look good for my son. I wanted him to be proud of me. How naive I was to think that was possible in Samantha's house. The guests started arriving around 7 o'clock in the evening. Michael's friends, colleagues, important clients, Samantha's family. More than 50 people filled the yard with laughter and conversation. I stayed in the kitchen at first, helping the caterers organize the trays. One of the girls looked at me with pity. "Ma'am, you don't have to do this. We've got it." But I needed something to do with my hands. I needed to feel useful. When I went out to the yard, I looked for Michael. He was by the pool, surrounded by friends, laughing. I approached with a smile. "Happy birthday, my love." I hugged him. He returned the hug, but it was quick, distracted. "Thanks, Mom. Have you eaten anything?" I nodded, even though I hadn't had a bite. I didn't want to be a burden, not on his special day. Samantha was at the center of everything, moving between groups, touching arms, laughing that high, bright laugh that drew all eyes. She was the kind of woman who lights up a room when she enters, but also darkens it for everyone else. I tried to chat with some guests. An older couple, friends of Samantha's family, were polite to me. We talked about the weather, the food, about nothing important. But I noticed them looking over my shoulder, as if searching for an excuse to get away. After a few minutes, they excused themselves. I was left alone by a table, holding a glass of wine I didn't want to drink, feeling like a piece of furniture someone forgot to move. Then I heard my name. It was coming from the group where Samantha was, near the bar. I drifted closer without thinking, believing they were calling me. But they weren't. They were talking about me. Samantha had her phone in her hand, showing something to her friends. "It's unbelievable," she was saying with that sweet voice she used when she wanted to sound compassionate. "Michael is so good to her. He keeps her here, gives her everything, and she doesn't even appreciate how lucky she is." One of her friends, a thin woman with lip fillers, nodded. "It must be so hard for you, Samantha, having to share your space like that." Samantha sighed, and in that sigh was something that chilled my blood. It was fake, completely fake. "I just hope Michael realizes it someday. She can't take care of herself. Without us, without this family, she has nothing. Absolutely nothing." I stood paralyzed behind a group of people, unintentionally hidden. No one had seen me. Samantha continued, "I give her 6 months, maybe a year tops, if Michael ever actually lets her go. She has no savings, no career, no thing but this roof over her head. And we provide that roof." Her friends murmured words of support. One said, "You're a saint for putting up with her." Another added, "I couldn't do it. My house is my sacred space." And Samantha smiled. That smile I had seen 1,000 times but now fully understood. Well, someone has to take care of her. Even if I sometimes feel like I'm raising 2 people instead of just planning my family with Michael, the words hit me like fists. Each one was a lie wrapped in poison. I had savings, not a lot after helping to pay for the wedding and other expenses. But I had something. I had worked my whole life. I had raised a son on my own. I had built a life with my own 2 hands when the world left me widowed and vulnerable. And this woman, this girl who had only come into our lives 3 years ago, was reducing me to nothing in front of strangers. She was turning me into a convenient lie for her narrative. I wanted to scream. I wanted to walk over there and confront her in front of everyone. But something stopped me. Maybe it was pride. Maybe it was the fear of ruining Michael's party. Or maybe it was a wiser part of me that knew anything I said would be used against me. I walked away without a sound, moving to the other side of the yard where there were fewer people. I sat on a bench under a tree, trying to breathe, trying to process what I had just heard. My hands were shaking. I looked at the house, that enormous house where I lived but that had never been mine. I looked at the people laughing and drinking, oblivious to the pain unfolding in the dark corners of the party. And I looked at my son, my Michael, the boy I had raised, whom I had loved more than my own life, surrounded by friends who had probably heard the same lies about me. How long had Samantha been doing this? How many times had she painted this picture of me as a burden, as someone pathetic who couldn't survive without charity? The anger began to grow. It wasn't a hot, explosive anger. It was cold, calculating, like ice spreading through my veins. I got up from the bench. I walked back toward the party with my head held high. If Samantha wanted to play this game, if she wanted to make me her favorite victim, then so be it. But she was about to find out that women from my generation didn't survive this long by being weak. We survived by being smart. I spent the next hour watching. Really watching. Not as the invisible mother-in-law trying not to be in the way, but as someone who had finally opened her eyes. I saw how Samantha touched every guest's arm when she spoke, how she tilted her head with false modesty when they paid her compliments. I saw how she controlled the flow of the party, directing conversations, moving people around like pieces on a chessboard. And I saw how, every time someone mentioned Michael, she made sure to be at the center of that story. We just closed a huge deal. We're thinking of buying a beach property. Our life is so blessed. Our. As if Michael were an extension of her and not his own person. Then it was time for the cake. A 3-tier cake decorated with gold details that must have cost over $500. Samantha called everyone to the center of the yard. The lights dimmed, and someone brought out the cake while we all sang Happy Birthday. Michael was beaming, surrounded by love and attention. Samantha was plastered to his side, her arm wound through his like a vine. When we finished singing, Michael blew out the candles. Everyone clapped, and then Samantha picked up a glass and lightly tapped it with a spoon. The tinkling sound made everyone quiet down. "I'd like to say a few words," she announced with that melodious voice she used for presentations. Everyone looked at her expectantly. She smiled, looking at Michael with adoration. 3 years ago, I met the man of my dreams, and not only did I gain a wonderful husband, but a family too. She paused dramatically. Some guests murmured sweet words. I was standing at the edge of the circle, half hidden behind other people. And part of that family, Samantha continued, and her gaze slid over to me, is Eleanor, Michael's mom. The way she said my name made something in my stomach twist. It didn't sound affectionate. It sounded like she was introducing a problem that needed to be discussed. "Eleanor lives with us," she went on, and now several faces turned toward me. Some with curiosity, others with that uncomfortable pity people reserve for difficult situations. And it has been quite an experience. An adventure, I'd say. Nervous laughter. My heart started to beat faster. What was she doing? Michael was looking at her with a confused smile, not understanding where this was going. Samantha took a sip of her drink. "But lately, I've been thinking. I've wondered what would happen if Eleanor had to fend for herself. You know, if she had to live alone, manage her own expenses, her own life." The yard had gone completely silent. I could feel my face burning, but I couldn't move. It was like being trapped in a nightmare where you scream, but no sound comes out. "And honestly," Samantha said, and now her voice had that tone of fake concern that made her sound generous when she was being cruel, "I doubt she could live on her own for more than a year. Maybe not even that." Some people looked down. Others exchanged uncomfortable glances. But there was a group, Samantha's friends mostly, who smirked. One of them even took out her phone and started recording. "I'm not saying it to be mean," my daughter-in-law continued. "I'm just telling the truth. Eleanor has nothing without this family, without Michael, without us. She has no career, no real resources, no independence. It's just a reality." The silence that followed was brutal. I could hear the buzz of insects in the garden, the water in the pool shifting softly, the distant sound of traffic on the street. and I could feel every pair of eyes on me. Some with pity, others with secondhand embarrassment, some with morbid curiosity, waiting to see how the pathetic old woman who had just been publicly destroyed would react. Michael finally spoke up. "Samantha, honey, I don't think this is the time." But his voice was weak, without conviction. He wasn't defending me. He was trying to smooth over the situation without contradicting his wife. Samantha ignored him. "I'm just saying we should be honest about these things. There's no shame in needing help. Eleanor needs this family, and we've been here for her. That's love, right?" She looked around, seeking validation. Some people nodded slowly, others just stared into their drinks, and I just stood there, in my pearl gray dress, feeling as though I had been stripped naked in front of strangers. 3 years of small humiliations had culminated in this moment, and Samantha had orchestrated it perfectly, at my own son's party, in front of dozens of witnesses who would now have this image of me seared into their minds. The pathetic mother-in-law, the burden, the old woman who couldn't take care of herself. But then, something changed. Maybe it was hearing my own thoughts spoken in Samantha's words. Maybe it was seeing Michael do nothing, letting his wife publicly demolish me. Or maybe it was simply that something inside me got tired of shrinking. I got tired of making myself small. I got tired of apologizing for existing. I got tired of being invisible in my own life. I took a deep breath and stepped forward, out of the shadows where I had been hiding. People parted slightly, creating a path. I walked until I was standing in front of Samantha, just a few feet away. She looked at me in surprise, and for a second, I saw a flash of worry in her eyes. "Good. Let her worry." "You're right, Samantha," I said. My voice came out steady, clear, louder than it had sounded in months. "You're absolutely right." She blinked, confused. This wasn't what she expected. She probably expected tears, a scene, something she could use to paint me as hysterical. "I doubt I could live on my own for a year depending on this family," I continued. I paused, letting the words hang in the air. Several phones were recording now. Perfect. Let them record this too. "Because this family," I said, and I looked around the yard at all those curious faces, "is not my family. Not anymore." I looked at Michael. My son, my baby, the boy I had held in my arms, whom I had comforted through nightmares, whom I had raised to be a good man. He was staring at me with his mouth slightly open, not understanding. "Why wait a year?" I asked, and now I smiled. It wasn't a sad or bitter smile. It was a calm smile, filled with a cold clarity I didn't even know I possessed. "I'm leaving now." The entire yard seemed to hold its breath. Samantha let out a nervous laugh. "Eleanor, don't be dramatic. You're misunderstanding." I didn't interrupt her. My voice remained calm, but there was steel in it. "I understand perfectly. And you're right about one thing. It's time for me to find out who I am without you. Thank you for the clarity." I turned around. I didn't run. I didn't flee. I walked with my back straight, my head high, each step measured and deliberate. I could feel the stairs burning into my back. I heard murmurs, the sound of someone saying my name, but I didn't stop. I entered the house through the kitchen door. The caterers moved aside, their faces showing shock and something that might have been respect. I went to my room and closed the door. Only then did my hands start to shake. I sat on the edge of my bed, looking at the room that had been my world for 3 years. The cream-colored walls, the closet where my modest clothes hung, the small dresser with the photos of Michael when he was a little boy. Photos I had framed, that I had cherished. Memories of a time when he was mine, when I was enough for him. My hands were still shaking, but my mind was strangely clear, as if a fog that had been covering me for years had finally lifted. I could hear the party continuing outside, quieter now, the laughter forced, the music. Life went on for all of them. But for me, something had ended, and something else was about to begin. I stood up and pulled my suitcase from the closet. It was old, bought over 15 years ago, but it was still functional. I began to pack methodically. Underwear, blouses, pants, the 2 good dresses I had, my comfortable shoes, my toiletries. I didn't have much. I'd never had much, but what I had was mine, earned with my work, with my effort. As I was folding a peach-colored blouse, I heard footsteps in the hall. Someone knocked softly on the door. Mom. It was Michael. Of course it was Michael. My heart squeezed painfully in my chest. For a moment, I considered not opening it, considered leaving him out there, wondering, feeling even a fraction of the abandonment I had felt all night. But I couldn't. He was still my son. He still carried my blood. I opened the door. He was standing there in his wrinkled white shirt, his hair disheveled, his eyes worried. Mom, please, don't do this. Don't do this. As if I were the one creating the problem. As if I were the one who had publicly humiliated someone. What exactly shouldn't I be doing, Michael? I asked. My voice sounded tired even to my own ears. He walked into the room without an invitation, saw the open suitcase on the bed. Panic crossed his face. You can't just leave like this. Samantha didn't mean it like that. She was just... You know how she is. Sometimes she speaks without thinking. She speaks without thinking, I repeated. The words sounded hollow. Michael, she spent weeks planning that party. Every detail was perfect. Do you really believe what she said was an accident? He ran his hands through his hair, frustrated. Okay, so maybe she crossed a line. But Mom, you're overreacting too. Leaving like this, making a scene. I made a scene? I couldn't help the bitter laugh that escaped my throat. Your wife tore me to shreds in front of 50 people. She said I can't survive on my own, that I have nothing, that I'm a burden on you. And when I leave with dignity, I'm the one making a scene? Michael looked at the floor. He had no answer for that. Or maybe he did, but he didn't want to say it. Why didn't you defend me? The question slipped out before I could stop it. I had wanted to sound strong, but my voice broke on the last word. Why did you just stand there while she destroyed me? I didn't know what to do, he said finally. His voice was small, like when he was a child and had broken something valuable. It happened so fast, and I didn't want to make things worse. You didn't want to make things worse, I whispered. I kept packing. I took the photos from the dresser, wrapped them in a soft blouse. Michael watched me, helpless. Mom, please stay. I'll talk to Samantha. She'll apologize. Everything will go back to normal. That's just it, Michael. I don't want everything to go back to normal. Because normal was me making myself invisible in my own life. Normal was your wife poisoning every day with little cruelties. Normal was you not seeing any of it, because it's easier not to see. I closed the suitcase. It wasn't much that I was taking. 3 years of my life reduced to one suitcase and a box with my books. Where are you going to go? Michael asked. There was something in his voice now, something that sounded like genuine concern, maybe even guilt. I have savings, I said. Not much, but I had them. I had been careful, even when I helped pay for his wedding, even when I contributed to the expenses of the house that was never really my house. I'll find a place. I'll be fine. Mom. He started, but I held up my hand. No, not tonight, Michael. Tonight I need to leave. I need to be alone and think. I looked at him, really looked at him, trying to find the boy I had raised in this man who had stayed silent while I was humiliated. I love you. I will always love you. But I can't stay here. I grabbed my suitcase and my purse. Michael didn't try to stop me physically, but he followed me down the hall, down the stairs, to the front door. The party was still going on in the yard, though quieter now. Everyone was probably gossiping about what had happened, creating their own versions of the story. It didn't matter. I walked out to the street and called an Uber on my phone. Michael stood in the doorway watching me go. I didn't cry. Not yet. The tears would come later. I knew that. But in that moment, I just felt a strange numbness, as if I were watching everything from outside my own body. The car arrived in 10 minutes. I gave the driver the address of a modest hotel I knew, not far from there. As we drove away, I saw the illuminated house in the rearview mirror. It looked beautiful from the outside, like a perfect postcard of success and happiness. No one passing by would know about the poison that lived between those walls. The hotel was simple, but clean. I paid for 1 week, using my credit card that had a low limit, but it was mine. The room was small, with a double bed and an old desk. Nothing compared to the house I had just left. But it was mine. Every inch of that space was mine. I sat on the bed and finally let out the breath I had been holding. And then my phone vibrated. It was a text from Michael. My heart leaped, hoping for maybe an apology, a promise that things would change. I opened the message. It was 3 long paragraphs. I started to read. "Mom, I need to be honest with you. Samantha and I have been talking for months about making some changes. With the baby we're planning on having, we're going to need that space you're using. And financially, we just can't keep carrying extra expenses. Samantha is right, that you need to learn to be more independent. I already spoke to the lawyer and had you removed from the will and the house deeds. It was something we should have done a while ago. I don't want you to think this is about tonight. It's just that we need to focus on our future as a couple. I hope you understand. You'll always be my mom, but I have my own family now." I read the message 3 times. Every word was a knife. The baby they were planning, the changes they had been discussing for months, removed me from the will, from the house deeds. It was all already planned. Tonight's humiliation hadn't been an impulse. It had been the final push to get me out of their lives permanently. And Michael had allowed it. No, more than that, Michael had actively participated. He had gone to a lawyer. He had signed papers. He had erased my name from his future. My son, the boy I had raised alone, who had been my reason for living for 25 years, had just eliminated me from his life with a text message. The phone fell from my hands onto the bed. I stared at the white hotel wall, not really seeing anything. And then, for the first time all night, I cried. I cried for the son I had lost. I cried for the years I had sacrificed. I cried for the woman who had been foolish enough to think that unconditional love was enough. I cried until there were no tears left, until my throat ached and my eyes were swollen. I cried until the sobs turned into anger, and that anger, cold and brilliant as a diamond, turned into something else. It turned into determination, into clarity, into power. If they wanted to see me fall, if they expected me to crumble, to beg them to let me come back, then they were in for a surprise. Because Eleanor Thompson had died tonight in that backyard, and the woman being born in this cheap hotel room was someone else entirely. She was someone who had forgotten just how strong she could be. I woke up the next day with swollen eyes and a dry throat, but with a mental clarity I hadn't felt in years. The sunlight streamed through the hotel window, illuminating the simple room that was now my temporary home. I looked at myself in the bathroom mirror. The woman looking back at me was 65 years old, wrinkles around her eyes, graying hair that I had always been ashamed of. But there was something different in that gaze. There was fire. I washed my face, combed my hair, and put on clean clothes. Then I took out my old laptop, the one I'd bought years ago and barely used because Samantha always commented on how outdated it was. I powered it on and started making a list. Not an emotional list of complaints or regrets. A practical, strategic list of resources and possibilities. First, my savings. I had approximately $23,000 in my bank account. It wasn't a fortune, but it wasn't nothing, either. It was the result of years of being careful, of not spending on nonsense, of saving every penny I could. With that, I could rent a small apartment for several months while I figured out what to do. Second, my education. A bachelor's in business administration, completed over 30 years ago. Experience working at a consulting firm before Michael was born. I had left all that to raise my son, but the knowledge was still there, tucked away somewhere in my brain. Third, my contacts. Decades had passed, but maybe some people still remembered me. It was worth a try. I opened my email, that old account I almost never used, and there, among the spam and notifications, I found something that made me pause. An email from 2 months ago from Arthur Vance. Arthur had been my late husband's business partner, a man who had known our family since before Michael was born. After my husband died, Arthur had offered me a job at his company, but I had refused because Michael was so young. We kept in sporadic contact for years, until I moved in with Michael and Samantha and lost track of many people. The email read, "Eleanor, I hope you are well. I've been thinking of you lately. If you'd ever like to grab a coffee and catch up, I'd love to see you. I've always admired your mind for business. All the best, Arthur. I stared at that email for a long time. 2 months. It had arrived 2 months ago, and I had never seen it because I'd stopped checking my email regularly. Samantha always said I didn't need to be glued to technology, that I should enjoy my retirement. Retirement, as if I had chosen to retire, as if I didn't have decades of productive life still ahead of me. With slightly trembling hands, I replied to the email. Arthur, thank you for thinking of me. I would love to get that coffee. Are you free this week? I have a lot to tell you, Eleanor. I hit send before I could second-guess myself. Then I searched my phone for another contact. Julia Hayes. We had been friends years ago, before I shut myself away in Michael and Samantha's house. Julia was a lawyer, specializing in family law. We had met in a support group for widows, both of us trying to rebuild our lives after losing our husbands. She had moved on, building a successful career. I had stayed stuck, focused solely on Michael. I sent her a text message. Julia, it's Eleanor. I know it's been a long time. Could we talk? I need legal advice, and also a friend. The reply came in less than 5 minutes. Eleanor, of course. Come to my office today if you can. I'll send the address. So good to hear from you. I changed into more formal clothes, a set of ivory-colored pants, and a blouse that made me look professional. I put on a little makeup, not to hide who I was, but to look presentable. I took a taxi to the address Julia had sent. Her office was in a modern building downtown. The waiting room was elegant but welcoming, with green plants and contemporary art on the walls. When Julia came out to greet me, I almost didn't recognize her. She had aged, as I had, but she wore her age with a confidence I had forgotten was possible. Short silver hair, a dark gray pantsuit, a wide smile. Eleanor, she said, hugging me. And in that hug, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Acceptance without judgment. In her private office, with hot coffee between us, I told her everything. The move with Michael and Samantha. The small humiliations. The party. The text from Michael about removing me from the will. Julia listened without interrupting, taking occasional notes. When I finished, she sighed deeply. Eleanor, I am so sorry you went through this. But legally, there are a few things you should know. She explained that if I had contributed financially to the purchase of the house or to improvements, I might have some rights. That if Michael had promised to care for me in exchange for me selling my apartment, that could be considered. But she was also honest. Legal battles were long, expensive, and emotionally devastating. You could fight, she said, and you might even win something, but it would cost you years of your life and probably all of your peace of mind. I don't want to fight, I said, surprising myself with the firmness in my voice. I don't want anything from them. What I want is to build something of my own, something so big that when they see me, they regret ever underestimating me. Julia smiled. It was a fierce, warrior's smile. I like that much better. In that case, let's talk strategy. We spent the next 2 hours discussing options. Julia told me about programs for entrepreneurs over 60, about community resources, about networking. She told me about women she knew who had reinvented their lives in their 60s and 70s. Age is an advantage if you know how to use it, she said. You have experience, maturity, resilience, and you have something many young people don't. Nothing to lose. The next day, Arthur replied to my email. We met at a small coffee shop near his office. When I walked in, he was already there, waiting. Arthur was 70, with completely white hair, but the same kind eyes I remembered. He stood up when he saw me and gave me a hug. Eleanor, how long has it been? We sat down and ordered coffee. He asked about Michael, and I felt the urge to lie, to say everything was fine. But I was tired of lying. I told him the truth. Not all of it, not the most painful details, but enough. He listened with a serious expression. That boy is a fool, he said finally. His father would be ashamed. The words hit me with an unexpected force. It was true. My husband had been a good, hard-working man who valued loyalty and respect. If he could see what Michael had done. But I don't want to talk about Michael, I said, straightening my back. I want to talk about me. Arthur, I need a job. I need a chance to prove I still have value. He looked at me intently. Eleanor, you have always had value. Your husband used to talk constantly about your vision for business. He said you were a better analyst than half our team. He grew thoughtful for a moment, sipping his coffee. I have a proposal. I'm starting a new division in my company. Specialized consulting for businesses that want to reach the senior market. It's a sector that's growing exponentially, but most companies don't know how to talk to that audience. I need someone who understands that demographic from the inside. Someone smart, with life experience, who can develop authentic strategies. My heart began to pound. A job. I'm offering you a partnership, he corrected. Not as an employee, as an independent consultant. You would develop your own methodology, your own programs. I would give you access to my network of clients and resources. We'd split the profits. It would be your own business, but with the backing of my infrastructure while you build it. I couldn't believe it. Yesterday I was crying in a hotel room. Today someone was offering me the chance to rebuild my professional life. Why? I asked. I needed to know. Why would you do this for me? Arthur smiled. Because I owe it to your husband. Because I believe in you. And because honestly, I think you are going to make this division extremely successful. This isn't charity, Eleanor. It's business. You have something I need. Authentic knowledge and a passion to prove your worth. He extended his hand. What do you say? Ready to get back in the game? I looked at his outstretched hand. I thought of Samantha saying I wouldn't last a year on my own. I thought of Michael erasing me from his life with a text. I thought of all those years of making myself small, invisible, insignificant, and then I shook Arthur's hand firmly. Ready, I said. And for the first time in years, I really was. The first 3 months were brutal, not because the work was hard, but because I had to relearn who I was without the identity of the selfless mother, without the role of the invisible mother-in-law. I rented a small one-bedroom apartment in a quiet neighborhood. It wasn't luxurious, but it had big windows that let in the sunlight and a balcony where I could have coffee in the mornings. It was mine. Every piece of furniture I bought, every plate, every towel, was my choice. For the first time in decades, no one was telling me my taste was outdated or inappropriate. I bought a used but solid desk, an ergonomic chair, and turned the corner of my living room into an office. This was where my new future would be born. Arthur kept his word. He connected me with my first client the second week, a chain of gyms that wanted to attract adults over 55 but didn't know how without sounding condescending. I sat down with their marketing directors, all in their 20s with prestigious degrees and zero understanding of their target audience. They looked at me with that mix of curiosity and skepticism reserved for older people in the corporate world. Eleanor, one of them started, a guy with thick glasses and a carefully scruffy beard. We appreciate you being here, but our brand is very modern. We don't want to alienate our younger audience. I smiled. It was the same smile I had used on Samantha that night in the yard. Calm, full of knowledge they didn't possess. Let me explain something to you, I said, opening my laptop where I had prepared a presentation. The over 55 market controls over 70% of the disposable income in this country. They have paid-off houses, substantial savings, and free time, but you're ignoring them because you assume they aren't cool. You know what isn't cool? Leaving money on the table because of generational bias. I showed them statistics, case studies, financial projections. I spoke for 45 minutes about demographics, consumer behavior, and strategies for inclusion without condescension. When I finished, the guy with the glasses was no longer looking at me with skepticism. He was looking at me like he had just struck gold. When can you start? He asked. I already have, I replied. I walked out of that meeting with a $25,000 contract to develop their entire strategy. With that first success, other clients started to come. A tech company that wanted to simplify its products for older users. A travel agency specializing in senior tourism. A pharmaceutical company that needed clearer communication. Every project taught me something new and gave me back a piece of the woman I had been before I got lost in motherhood. It wasn't that I regretted raising Michael, but I regretted disappearing in the process. I worked 12-hour days, not because I had to, but because I loved it. Every presentation, Every analysis, every strategy was a declaration. I am still here. I still matter. I can still build things. Julia became my confidant and unofficial advisor. We met every 2 weeks for dinner, and she helped me navigate the legal world of contracts and business. You need to formalize this, she told me one night over cheap pasta and wine. Create an LLC. Protect your assets. This isn't a hobby anymore, Eleanor. This is a real business. She was right. With her help, I established my own company, Silver Strategies Consulting. The name was deliberate. Silver for the gray hair, for the wisdom that comes with years. I wasn't hiding from my age. I was branding it. I designed a simple but elegant logo. I created a basic website. And I started building a presence on social media, something I'd never done because Samantha always said older people looked ridiculous on Instagram. But it turned out there was a huge market of women my age who were sick of being invisible. I started posting about reinvention after 60, about starting businesses in your senior years, about not letting others define your worth. My first posts got 5 or 10 likes, then 50, then hundreds. Women would write me private messages, sharing their own stories of humiliation, of being dismissed, of waking up one day and realizing they had disappeared. And I answered every single one. It's not too late. It is never too late. I am 65, and I am just getting started. My words resonated because they were true. I wasn't selling a fantasy. I was living proof. 6 months in, my business was generating more money than I had earned in my entire previous life. I wasn't a millionaire, but I was comfortable. More than comfortable. I was able to move into a better apartment, in a building with security and a gym. I bought new clothes, not because the old ones were bad, but because I wanted to. Brightly colored dresses that Samantha would have said were inappropriate for my age. Elegant coats that made me feel powerful when I walked down the street. I cut my hair in a modern style that framed my face. I wasn't trying to look younger. I was trying to look like me. Strong, capable, present. People began to notice me in different ways. In business meetings, they no longer treated me like a lost grandmother. They treated me like an expert. Arthur was thrilled. Eleanor, we need to expand this. You're generating more business than you can handle alone. He was right. Consulting requests were coming in faster than I could process them, so I did something I never thought I'd do. I hired help. First, a virtual assistant, a 58-year-old woman who had been laid off from her corporate job and needed a fresh start. Then a 62-year-old graphic designer who had lost her husband and was looking for purpose. I built a team of women the world had discarded, and together we proved that world wrong. We proudly called ourselves the Silver Circle. And our work was exceptional. The media started to notice. First, it was a small article in a local paper about senior entrepreneurs. Then an interview in a business magazine. Then I was invited onto a popular podcast about professional reinvention. Every appearance brought more clients, more recognition, more validation that what I was building mattered. On one of those podcasts, the interviewer asked what had inspired me to start. I could have given a safe answer about always wanting to be an entrepreneur, but I decided to be honest. I was inspired by humiliation, I said. I was inspired by someone telling me I was worthless without them. I was inspired by discovering I had been wrong about myself for years. The episode went viral. Thousands of people shared it. The comments were filled with women saying, "Me too," and "This is me," and I needed to hear this. 8 months after I walked out of Michael's house, my company had billed over $200,000. I was personally earning more in a month than I had in a year when I worked before Michael was born. But the best part wasn't the money. It was the sense of purpose. It was waking up every day knowing that what I did mattered, that I was helping other people, that I was building something no one could take away from me. I opened a new savings account and started filling it aggressively. Not because I was afraid of being left with nothing again, but because I wanted options. I wanted to be able to say no. I wanted the power to choose. During all this time, Michael tried to contact me several times. Text messages that I read but didn't answer. "Mom, how are you? Mom, we need to talk. Samantha wants to apologize." Each message was a test of my resolve. Part of me, that part that had been a mother for so many years, wanted to answer, wanted to forgive and forget. But a newer, stronger part knew that responding would be a step backward. Not out of anger, but out of peace. I decided that when I was ready to talk to Michael, it would be on my terms. When I was so undeniably successful that he couldn't help but see what he had lost. When my absence had taught the lesson my presence never could. I blocked his number temporarily. Not forever, but for now. I needed this time for myself, without the distraction of his guilt or his attempts to fix what he had broken. And I kept building. Every day was another brick in the building of my new life. Some days were hard. Some days I sat on my balcony and cried for the son I had lost, for the years I couldn't get back. But those days became less frequent. And in their place, something more solid grew. Certainty. The certainty that I had done the right thing, that I deserved more than I had accepted, that my story hadn't ended that night in the garden. It was just beginning. It was Julia who showed me the video first. We were having lunch at a restaurant near her office when she pulled out her phone with a strange expression. "Eleanor, you need to see this. It's going viral." She passed me the phone, and there it was, the video from that night in the yard. Someone had uploaded it to social media, but not in the way Samantha had planned. The title read, "Cruel Daughter-in-Law Humiliates Mother. In-Law at Family Party. Watch what happens next." It had over 2 million views. My stomach clenched as I watched it. There was Samantha in her emerald green dress, saying all those horrible things about me. The camera perfectly captured her cruel smile, the way she looked for validation from her friends. And then it captured me, stepping out of the shadows, my voice calm but firm. "Why wait a year? I'm leaving now." The comments were devastating for Samantha. What a venomous woman. The mother-in-law has more class in her little finger than this girl has in her whole body. "Updates, please. I need to know the grandma is okay." Thousands and thousands of comments defending me, attacking Samantha, sharing their own stories of family abuse. The video had clearly struck a nerve. It wasn't just about me. It was about all the older women who had been dismissed, belittled, made invisible, and people were furious. "I didn't know anyone had uploaded it," I said, handing the phone back to Julia with trembling hands. She nodded. It was one of the guests. Apparently, she felt so uncomfortable with what Samantha did that she decided to expose her. And it worked. In the following days, the video reached more platforms: TikTok, Facebook, Twitter, influencers shared it with their own commentary. Journalists began writing articles about ageism and emotional family abuse, using my story as an example. And then they started to find more. Former housekeepers who had worked for Samantha and Michael began to speak out. One of them, a woman named Maria, gave an interview to a popular blog. She talked about how Samantha treated her, yelling at her for minimal mistakes, withholding pay, making her work overtime without compensation. And the way she treated her husband's mom was worse, Maria said in the interview. "Mrs. Thompson was so kind, she always treated us with respect. But Samantha humiliated her constantly. She forbade her from entering certain parts of the house. She'd serve her leftovers while they ate fresh food. It was abuse." More women came forward with similar stories. A nanny Samantha had fired without notice. A florist Samantha had publicly accused of ruining an event when the mistake had been Samantha's. A pattern was emerging. Samantha was cruel to anyone she perceived as inferior or powerless to fight back. The brands Samantha worked with as an influencer began to distance themselves. She had a small YouTube channel about luxury lifestyles and a few minor brand deals. One by one, those contracts were canceled. The companies issued statements saying their values did not align with abusive behavior. Samantha's YouTube channel lost thousands of subscribers in days. Her Instagram posts, which used to get thousands of likes, were now flooded with hundreds of negative comments. Abuser. Fake. Karma. I watched all of this from a distance, with complicated feelings. Part of me felt a dark satisfaction watching her world crumble. It was the justice I hadn't sought, but that the universe was delivering anyway. But another part of me, the part that was still a mother, worried about Michael. Because if Samantha was falling, he would fall with her. And then I got a text from an unknown number. It was Chris, Michael's best friend from college. Mrs. Thompson, I need to talk to you. It's about Michael, please. I hesitated, but finally agreed to meet him at a neutral coffee shop. Chris arrived, looking tired, nervous. He sat across from me and sighed deeply. Thanks for coming. I know the family has treated you terribly. What's wrong with Michael? I asked, getting straight to the point. Chris stared at his coffee. He's a wreck. The video, the public exposure, it's all affecting his job. His clients are questioning him. But that's not the worst part. He paused. He found out Samantha has been lying to him about a lot of things. Finances, mainly. She spent over $60,000 in the last 6 months on things she hid: clothes, beauty treatments, even a sports car she bought in her sister's name but that she drives. Michael thought they were saving for the baby they were supposedly trying to have. But it turns out Samantha never wanted kids. It was just another lie to keep him under control. The cold anger I had felt that night returned. She hadn't just taken my son from me. She had been manipulating him all this time. There's more, Chris continued. Michael found texts between Samantha and her friends. Texts from over a year ago where she was making fun of him. She said he was boring but useful because he had a good income and a house. That she was just with him until she found something better. It was all planned, Mrs. Thompson. From the beginning, she was just using him. I closed my eyes. My poor, foolish son. He had chosen that woman over his mother, and now he was discovering she had never even loved him. Why are you telling me this? I asked. Chris looked at me directly. Because he wants to talk to you, but he's too ashamed. Because he needs his mother, even if he doesn't know how to ask. And because you deserve to know that he finally understands what he lost. I didn't answer right away. I drank my coffee, processing the information. Michael had made choices. He had chosen to believe Samantha. He had allowed my humiliation. He had erased me from his life with a text. The consequences of those choices were his to bear. Tell Michael, I said finally, that when he's ready to talk, I'll be ready to listen. But not because I need him to, because he might need to. Chris nodded, understanding. That's fair. More than fair. He got up to leave, then paused. For what it's worth, all his real friends thought what they did to you was horrible, and we're all proud to see what you've built. Your story has inspired a lot of people. After he left, I stayed in the coffee shop, thinking. The viral video, Samantha's downfall, I hadn't planned any of it. I hadn't sought public revenge. I had chosen the harder path, to build something so solid that my absence would speak for itself. And now, the world was doing the rest. But I didn't feel the triumph I thought I would. I felt something more complex. I felt grief for the lost time. I felt sadness for my son, who had learned such painful lessons. But I also felt peace. Peace because I knew that no matter what happened with Michael, I would be okay. I no longer needed his validation to know my worth. That night, as I was working on a proposal for a new client, my phone rang. Unknown number. I answered. Mom, it was Michael. His voice sounded broken, small, like when he was a child and had a nightmare. I said nothing, waiting. Mom, I'm sorry. I am so sorry for everything. You were right about Samantha. You were right about everything. I was an idiot. I was a terrible son, and I understand if you never forgive me, but I needed you to know. I'm sorry. Tears began to roll down my cheeks, but my voice came out firm. Michael, I appreciate your apology, but I can't have this conversation right now. I need time. I've built a new life, and I need to protect my peace. When I'm ready, I will let you know. I understand, he said, his voice cracking. I want you to know I'm proud of you. I saw your company. I read about your success. You're amazing, Mom. You always were, and I was too blind to see it. Goodbye, Michael, I said softly. I hung up before he could answer. I sat in my home office, in the apartment I had built with my own money, surrounded by the evidence of my success. And I cried. I cried for what had been. I cried for what could have been, but I also smiled, because I had survived. Not just survived, I had flourished, and that no one could take away from me. 3 weeks after Michael's call, I received an invitation that would change everything. The city's Chamber of Commerce was organizing its annual Entrepreneurship Summit, a prestigious event where business leaders shared their success stories, and they had selected me as one of the keynote speakers. The topic of my talk: Reinvention after 60. It's never too late to start. When I read the invitation, my hands trembled. Speaking in front of 300 people in a corporate auditorium, being on a stage under bright lights, sharing my story with strangers who would judge me, analyze me, measure me. The old Eleanor would have declined immediately. She would have said she wasn't qualified, that someone else deserved the honor. But I wasn't the old Eleanor anymore. I accepted the invitation. I spent 2 weeks preparing my presentation. Not just the business technicalities, but the emotional story behind it. Julia helped me rehearse, sitting in my living room as I practiced over and over. "You need to mention the humiliation," she told me during one rehearsal. "It's the most powerful part. It's what makes your story real." I had been avoiding that detail, not wanting to seem victimized or bitter. But she was right. The humiliation was the catalyst. Without it, there would have been no transformation. "You don't have to name names," Julia continued. "But people need to understand where you came from to appreciate how far you've come." So I rewrote entire sections, adding the raw truth of that yard, of that text message, of that night in the cheap hotel, crying myself to sleep. The day of the event arrived, overcast and cool. I put on a wine-colored pantsuit I had bought specifically for the occasion, elegant but powerful. I did my makeup carefully, not to hide my age but to highlight it. I wanted every wrinkle to be seen. They were maps of survival, battle scars. I arrived at the convention center an hour early. The auditorium was enormous, with rows and rows of seats rising toward the ceiling. The stage had a giant screen and professional lighting. My stomach churned with nerves, but I took a deep breath. I had survived worse than a stage. Arthur arrived to support me, along with my small team from the Silver Circle. "You're going to be incredible," my assistant said, squeezing my hand. People began to fill the auditorium. Executives in expensive suits, young entrepreneurs with laptops, students taking notes. I was scheduled to speak after lunch, the prime spot when people are alert but relaxed. As I waited backstage, I checked my phone nervously. And then I saw it. A text from Chris. "Mrs. Thompson, Michael is here. In the auditorium, row 12. Just wanted you to know." Samantha tried to come with him, but he told her no. They're officially separated. Good luck. My heart stopped. Michael was here. My son had come to watch me speak. I didn't know whether to feel happy or terrified. I decided not to think about it. I had a job to do. The host called me to the stage. The applause was polite, professional. I walked to the podium, back straight, head high. The lights were blinding, making it impossible to see individual faces in the audience. Better that way. I took a deep breath and began. 11 months ago, I was 65 years old, and I had nothing. No job, no income of my own, no sense of identity outside of being someone's mother. I was living in my son's house as an unwanted guest, making myself smaller every day, believing that was all I deserved. The auditorium went completely silent. And then, at a family party, someone told me that I wouldn't last a year living on my own, that I was nothing without that family. And something inside of me broke. Or maybe it fixed itself. It's hard to tell. I told the story. Not with self-pity, but with brutal honesty. The humiliation, the decision to leave, the devastating text from Michael. I heard gasps in the audience, murmurs of sympathy. But I didn't stop there. I told them about the hotel, about calling Arthur, about building Silver Strategies Consulting from scratch. I shared real numbers. My first $25,000, then $50,000, then $100,000. I showed before and after photos. Me in that hotel room with a single suitcase. Me now, in my modern office with my team. "Age makes us invisible in this society," I said, my voice growing stronger, especially women. "We are told our value ends when we stop being young, when we stop being conventionally attractive, when we stop being useful to others. But that is a lie. I am 66 years old. I have wrinkles. I have gray hair. I have knees that ache when it rains. And I also have a company that generates over $300,000 annually. I have clients who respect me. I have a team that trusts me. I have a life that I built with these hands that someone said were not capable of holding anything. The audience erupted in applause. Not the polite applause from the beginning. Real, loud applause, with people getting to their feet. I saw movement in row 12. Someone standing up. And though the lights made it hard to see clearly, I knew it was Michael. He was on his feet, clapping, and in the distance I could see he was crying. My voice broke slightly, but I continued. So for anyone here who thinks it's too late, for anyone who has been dismissed, underestimated, made invisible, it is not. You are not too old, too tired, too late. You are exactly what the world needs. Experience, resilience, wisdom. Use it. When I finished, the ovation was deafening. People of all ages on their feet, applauding. I saw tears on many faces. The host had to wait almost 2 minutes before the noise died down enough to speak. Eleanor, that was extraordinary. Do you have time for a few questions from the audience? I nodded. Hands shot up immediately. A young woman asked about specific marketing strategies. An older man asked about overcoming fear. And then someone in row 12 raised their hand. The host passed him a microphone. Michael's voice, amplified throughout the auditorium, asked, "Is there room for forgiveness in your story of reinvention? Or are some wounds just too deep?" The auditorium fell silent. It wasn't the kind of business question they were expecting. It was personal, raw, obviously loaded with meaning. I looked toward where Michael stood, my eyes finally adjusting to the lights. I could see him clearly now. My son, thinner than before, with dark circles under his eyes, but looking at me with something I hadn't seen in years. Genuine respect. "That's a complicated question," I said slowly, choosing my words with care. "I believe forgiveness isn't something you owe to other people. It's something you give yourself so you can move on. I have forgiven the people who hurt me not because they deserve it, but because carrying that anger was hurting me." I paused. But forgiving doesn't mean forgetting. It doesn't mean letting the same people hurt you in the same way again. It means setting boundaries, protecting your peace, and rebuilding trust slowly, if it's rebuilt at all. Michael lowered the microphone, nodding. I could see he understood. He understood that the door wasn't closed forever, but it wasn't wide open either. I answered a few more questions before the event continued. When I walked off the stage, I was surrounded by people wanting to talk to me, to exchange business cards, to share their own stories. But my eyes kept searching the crowd for Michael. Finally, I saw him, waiting at the edge of the group, not forcing his way in, just waiting patiently. When the crowd finally thinned, he approached. We looked at each other for a long moment without saying anything. And then he spoke, his voice barely a whisper. "I'm so proud of you, Mom, and so ashamed of myself." "I know," I said simply. "Michael, you need to understand that I can't go back to being who I was. That woman died that night in your yard. This version of me has boundaries. She has expectations. She has self-worth that isn't dependent on being your mother." "I understand," he said quickly. "And I'm not asking you to come back. I'm not asking you to pretend nothing happened. I'm just asking for a chance to get to know this new version of you, to rebuild something, even if it's different." I looked at him. "My son, my greatest love and my greatest sorrow. We can try," I said finally, slowly, "coffee once a month, to start. No promises, no expectations. Just two people learning to know each other again." Tears rolled freely down his face now. "Thank you, Mom. That's more than I deserve." "Yes," I agreed softly. "It is. Don't waste it." A year after that night in the garden, my life was unrecognizable. Silver Strategies Consulting had grown beyond my wildest dreams. It was no longer just me and a small team. I now had real offices in a corporate building downtown, with 12 full-time employees, all women over 50 who had been discarded by the traditional corporate world. We had expanded into 3 countries, Mexico, Colombia, and Spain. Contracts were coming in faster than we could process them. Fortune 500 companies wanted my expertise. Universities invited me to give lectures. My story had been featured in international business magazines, always with the same angle: the woman who turned humiliation into an empire. Money was no longer a concern. I had surpassed $1 million in annual revenue. I bought a beautiful apartment overlooking the city, the kind of place I used to look at in magazines, thinking it would never be for someone like me. I had art on the walls, elegant furniture I had chosen personally, a balcony where I drank coffee every morning watching the sunrise. But the best part wasn't the material things. It was the sense of solidity, of knowing that no one could take away what I had built, because I had built it myself with my intelligence, my hard work, my refusal to disappear. Every morning I looked in the mirror and saw a woman I liked, a strong woman, a woman who had survived and flourished. Michael and I had been seeing each other once a month, just as I'd promised. Awkward coffees at first, with long silences and careful conversations. But slowly, very slowly, something was growing. Not the mother-son relationship we had before. That had died and wasn't coming back. This was something new, something more honest. He told me about his divorce from Samantha, which had been brutal and public. She had fought for the house, for money she hadn't earned, using every manipulative tactic in her arsenal. But in the end, the truth had won. Michael kept the house, but he decided to sell it. "I can't live there," he told me at one of our coffees. "Every room has memories of how I treated you, of how I let her treat you." I didn't console him. That was his burden to carry, his lesson to learn. He told me how Samantha had tried to ruin him after the divorce, posting lies on social media, contacting his clients with fabricated stories. But the world already knew who she really was. The viral video had marked her permanently. Now she was working retail at a department store, an honest job, but a far cry from the luxury life she had planned. "I sometimes feel sorry for her," I admitted at one of our meetings. He looked at me, surprised. "How can you? After everything she did to you?" Because she built her entire life on lies and manipulation. And when that building collapsed, she had nothing real underneath. I did. I had real skills, real experience, real strength. She never developed anything of her own. That's a sad way to live. Michael had been going to therapy, something he told me shyly, as if expecting me to mock him, but I encouraged him. Good. We all need help processing our decisions. To understand why we do the things we do. He told me his therapist had helped him see patterns. How he had chosen Samantha because she was dominant and he wanted someone else to make decisions. How he had sacrificed his relationship with me because it was easier than confronting his wife. "I was a coward," he said at one of our last coffees. "Not just with you. In my whole life. I let other people decide for me, and then I was surprised when things went wrong. Awareness is the first step," I told him, "but it only matters if you use it to change." He nodded, taking my words seriously in a way he never had before. And then the invitation arrived. The biggest business event of the year. A gala recognizing the most outstanding entrepreneurs of the year. And I was nominated. Not just nominated. I was told I was the favorite to win in my category. Business reinvention. The gala would be at the most exclusive hotel in the city. 500 guests. Media coverage. The kind of event where careers are changed. I was given 3 guest tickets. I invited Arthur, of course. Without him, none of this would have been possible. I invited Julia, my constant rock through this whole journey. And after thinking about it for a long time, I offered the 3rd ticket to Michael. "You don't have to go," I told him. "I understand if it would be uncomfortable." He looked at me with shining eyes. "Mom, I wouldn't miss this for the world." The night of the gala was bright and cold. I wore a long, champagne-colored gown that made me feel like royalty. I had let my hair grow out a bit, all silver gray now, no dye, and had it styled in an elegant updo. Simple but expensive jewelry I had bought for myself as a symbol of my success. When I arrived at the hotel with my team, the camera flashes surprised me. Reporters wanted interviews. "Mrs. Thompson, how does it feel to be nominated? What advice do you have for women who want to reinvent themselves? Your story has inspired millions. What's next for you?" I answered every question with grace, feeling the confidence flow through my veins. This was my night. I had earned it. The ballroom was spectacular. Round tables with white linens and enormous floral centerpieces, an orchestra playing soft music, waiters circulating with champagne and appetizers. I sat at my table with Arthur, Julia, Michael, and some of my employees. They were all beaming, proud. During dinner, Michael leaned toward me. "Mom, there's something you need to know." His voice sounded nervous. My heart tightened. "Samantha is here. She managed to get an invitation somehow. She's at a table in the back. I just thought you should know before you saw her." I looked in the direction he indicated, and there she was. Samantha, in a black dress that had seen better days, sitting alone at a nearly empty table, scanning the room with a bitter expression. Our eyes met for a second. She looked small, diminished, as if all the venom she had carried inside had finally consumed her. I felt nothing. Not anger, not satisfaction, not triumph, just indifference. She no longer had any power over me. She was irrelevant to my story. I turned my back to her and continued my conversation with my table. Then it was time for the awards. Several categories were announced first: tech innovation, social entrepreneurship. Each winner went up to the stage to enthusiastic applause. And then my category arrived. The Business Reinvention Award recognizes an entrepreneur who has overcome significant adversity to build a successful business. This year, the nominees are. They read 3 names, including mine. My heart was beating so hard I thought everyone could hear it. And the winner is Eleanor Thompson, founder of Silver Strategies Consulting. The room exploded in applause. My table leaped to their feet, cheering. Michael had tears rolling down his face. Arthur hugged me tightly. "You did it," he whispered. "I always knew you would." I walked to the stage, my legs trembling, but my head high. The award was a beautiful crystal plaque, heavy in my hands. I stood at the microphone, looking out at 500 people, on their feet, applauding. I scanned the crowd for Samantha. She was sitting, alone at her table, staring at me with an expression I can only describe as absolute defeat. And in that moment, I understood something profound. I hadn't won because she lost. I had won because I chose to build instead of destroy. Because when she tried to make me small, I chose to become enormous. Not for revenge, but for survival. Not to prove anything to her, but to prove everything to myself. "Thank you," I began, my voice firm and clear. "A year ago, someone told me that I had nothing. And that person was right. I had nothing, except a decision to make, to disappear or to flourish. I chose to flourish, and in the process I discovered that it is never too late to become who you were meant to be. This award isn't just mine. It's for every woman who has been dismissed, underestimated, made invisible. It's for every person who has picked themselves up off the floor after being knocked down. It's for everyone who dares to start over when the world says it's too late. Thank you." The applause was deafening. I walked off the stage with my award, feeling its weight, not just the crystal, but what it represented. Validation, recognition, proof that I mattered. As I returned to my table, I passed by Samantha's. She was looking at me, her eyes filled with something that might have been regret, or maybe just envy. I paused for a second, and then I kept walking. Not with cruelty, simply with indifference. She was no longer part of my story. That night, after the gala ended, Michael walked me to the car. "Mom," he said, his voice breaking, "I am so proud of you. And so sorry. I wish I could turn back time." "I wouldn't," I said honestly. "If I could turn back time, I would still be that small, invisible woman settling for crumbs, that night in your yard when Samantha humiliated me. It was the greatest gift anyone has ever given me. It set me free. It forced me to see myself, and it gave me the anger I needed to transform." I looked at him. "My son, this imperfect man I loved in spite of everything. So, thank you. Tell Samantha," I said thank you, because without her cruelty, I never would have discovered my strength. He nodded, understanding. We hugged, a real hug, with forgiveness and hope woven in. That day, she thought she was destroying me, but it was the day I began, and this is only the beginning. I stood in front of my son's apartment, took a deep breath, and pressed the doorbell. A shadow flickered across the peephole, followed by a long silence. I pressed the bell again, this time adding 3 distinct knocks. "Who is it?" My daughter-in-law Jessica's annoyed voice came from inside. "It's me, Eleanor," I said, intentionally keeping my voice low, making myself sound like any other old woman. The door opened a crack. Jessica's perfectly made-up face appeared in the gap, her brow furrowed. "Mom? What are you doing here all of a sudden?" "I've retired, and I was thinking I'd come to the city and stay with you for a while," I said, tugging at the old coat I had specifically bought from a thrift store. A small suitcase sat by my feet. Jessica's eyes scanned me from head to toe, from my deliberately grayed hair down to my faded flats, finally landing on the tiny suitcase. I could see the calculation in her eyes. This old lady didn't look like she was carrying anything of value. "Michael, your mother's here," she called into the apartment, reluctantly pulling the door open. "Come on in." I dragged my suitcase into the apartment I had secretly helped pay for. The living room was much messier than the last time I'd visited. The coffee table was piled high with takeout containers and empty beer cans, and children's toys were scattered across the rug. Michael shuffled out of the bedroom, his t-shirt stained with something suspicious, his hair a mess. "Mom, why didn't you call first?" he asked, rubbing his eyes. There was no surprise in his voice, only the annoyance of being disturbed. "I wanted to surprise you," I said with a smile, trying to hide the sting in my heart. My son, the son I had poured everything into raising, was now looking at me like I was an unwelcome guest. "Grandma!" A bright, childish voice broke the awkwardness. My grandson, Leo, rushed out of his room and threw his arms around my waist. "Grandma, you really came." I knelt and hugged this little 8-year-old ray of sunshine tightly. "Yes, Grandma promised she'd come see you, remember?" "I remember. You said you'd teach me how to play chess." Leo pulled my hand excitedly. "I finished all my homework. Can we start now?" Jessica snorted. "Finished your homework? Did you memorize your spelling words? Did you check your math problems? All you think about is playing." Leo's shoulders immediately slumped. I gently squeezed his little hand. "Let Grandma get settled first, and I'll start teaching you tomorrow, okay?" "How long are you planning to stay?" Jessica asked bluntly, her arms crossed over her chest. I pretended not to hear the hostility in her tone. "I'll stay for a month and see how it goes, if you don't mind me being a bother." "The guest room is full of junk," Michael chimed in. "Why don't you sleep on the couch for now, Mom?" I glanced at the narrow sofa, piled high with clothes and clutter. "That's fine. I can help clean out the guest room." Jessica pursed her lips. "Whatever. You're on your own for dinner. We're ordering takeout," she added. "No need. I can cook," I said, rolling up my sleeves. "Is there any food in the fridge?" "It's empty," Jessica shrugged. "We usually just order in." I opened the refrigerator. It was indeed completely bare, except for a few cans of beer and an open jar of hot sauce. "Then I'll go to the supermarket and buy some groceries." "Turn right outside the building. There's a cheap market down the street," Michael said, already sitting back on the couch and picking up his phone. I nodded and left with my old wallet. Inside were only a few $20 bills, part of my carefully crafted image as a poor old woman. At the market, I chose the most common vegetables and a small tilapia. The vendors paid little attention to a shabby old woman like me, which suited me just fine. Back at my son's apartment, I tied on an apron and started preparing dinner. Leo leaned against the kitchen doorway watching me work. "Grandma, what you're cooking smells so good." "This is about all your grandma is good for," Jessica's voice carried from the living room, deliberately loud. "Never held a job her whole life, and now she's old and has to rely on her son." My hand paused for a moment, then I continued chopping the potatoes. Yes, in their eyes, I was just an unemployed, ordinary housewife. Michael's father had passed away early, and I had supported him through college by working odd jobs. What they didn't know was that those odd jobs were actually my career, working my way up from the bottom to a senior executive position at a major financial firm. For dinner, I made 4 dishes: baked tilapia, roasted potatoes, sautéed spinach, and a simple egg drop soup. Leo ate with gusto, and even Michael had 2 helpings. Only Jessica picked at her food, finding fault with every bite. "The fish is too salty, the spinach is too tough to chew, and this soup tastes like dishwater," she complained while scrolling through her phone. I ate silently, observing this home I once thought would be my support in my old age. Michael just kept his head down and ate, occasionally mumbling agreement with his wife. Leo would sneak glances at me and wink, as if to comfort me. "Mom, how much is your pension?" Jessica suddenly asked. "Not much, a little over $1,000 a month," I said, deliberately leaving off a zero. "Tesk," Jessica rolled her eyes. "What can that little money do in the city? It's not even enough to cover the utility bills." Michael finally looked up. "Mom, since you're staying in the city, did you transfer your health insurance? We can't be paying for it if you get sick." "My health is fine. I won't be a burden to you," I said softly. "Easy for you to say." Jessica slammed her chopsticks down. "Who doesn't get sick when they're old? The hospital bills, the nursing fees, that'll all fall on us, won't it?" The bowl shattered on the floor, rice scattering everywhere. I was stunned, not expecting her to explode like that. "What are you looking at?" Jessica screamed, pointing her finger at my nose. "Look at you, living here for free and acting all high and mighty. I'm telling you, we're still paying off the mortgage on this place. We don't have spare cash to support a freeloader." Michael even slammed his half-eaten bowl of rice down on the table. "Mom, I have to say, you should have some shame. Do you have any idea how much pressure we're under?" Leo burst into tears with a wail. I stood up and calmly began to clear my own dishes. "Don't bother," Jessica sneered. "Get out tomorrow." I nodded, walked into the guest room that was my temporary space, and started packing my meager belongings. Leo followed me in, crying and hugging my leg. "Grandma, don't go." I knelt and held him. "Be good. Grandma will come see you again when I have time." 10 minutes later, I was standing at the door with my suitcase. Jessica stood with her arms crossed, a cold smile on her face. Michael continued to play on his phone without even looking up. "Before I go, I have one more thing to say," I said. I took out my phone, opened my banking app, and turned the screen towards them. "This is my pension account balance." Jessica glanced at it dismissively at first, then her eyes widened in shock. Michael looked up too, his expression shifting from confusion to utter disbelief. Thousands, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands. Jessica's voice began to tremble. $3,720,000, I said calmly. "And this is just the pension account. My other assets total around $20 million. The room fell deathly silent. Even Leo stopped crying. "Mom, you..." Michael stood up, his face looking as if it had been struck by lightning. "I just wanted to see, if I had nothing, whether my own son would give me a place to stay," I said, putting my phone away. "Now I have my answer." I turned and pushed the door open. Behind me, I heard Jessica's shriek. "Mom, wait, we didn't know. We can explain." I didn't look back. I walked into the elevator and pressed the button for the ground floor. Just as the doors were closing, I heard Michael's desperate cry, "Mom, don't go." Outside the building, I hailed an Uber. "The Sterling Tower on the Gold Coast," I told the driver. That was my real home, a multi-million-dollar high-rise luxury condo. My phone began to vibrate incessantly, call after call from Michael. I declined them all, then sent a single text message. "Be at the Sterling Tower, apartment 1802, at 10 o'clock tomorrow morning to talk." After sending the text, I turned off my phone, leaned back against the seat, and closed my eyes. The tears finally fell, silent and bitter. This was a test I had desperately hoped to fail. The fingerprint lock at the Sterling Tower, apartment 1802, recognized my print, and the door slid open silently. I stepped into the 2,000-square-foot luxury apartment and tossed my small suitcase onto the imported leather sofa. Beyond the floor-to-ceiling windows, the entire city's lights spread out before me, a stark contrast to the dim lighting in my son's apartment. I took off the old coat, pulled a silk robe from the closet, and drew a hot bath. An aromatherapy diffuser by the tub released a faint scent of lavender, but I couldn't relax. When I closed my eyes, my son's words, "You should have some shame," twisted in my heart like a knife. I turned my phone back on. 23 missed calls, all from Michael. A dozen text messages, ranging from initial apologies to final pleas. I didn't reply. Instead, I sent a message to my private lawyer, Arthur Chen. Bring the files on Michael's company. Be here at 9 o'clock tomorrow morning. After my bath, I stood before the windows, looking down at the city nightlife. 28 years ago, holding a 1-month-old Michael, I had stood at the window of our old, crumbling company dormitory, looking at these same city lights. My husband had just died in a work accident, and the compensation from the factory was pitiful. But I had sworn to give my son the best possible future. It took me 20 years to go from a workshop clerk to a senior executive at a financial firm. All those nights working overtime, all those times male colleagues scoffed that women didn't understand finance, all those evenings I had to leave a feverish Michael home alone, it was all for this. And what had I gotten in return? The doorbell rang. Who could it be this late? The security monitor showed Arthur's face. I opened the door. He hurried in, carrying a briefcase. Eleanor, it seems the results of your little test were less than ideal. Sit, I said, gesturing to the sofa. I need the latest on Michael's company. Arthur took a folder from his briefcase. It's worse than we thought. His renovation company's cash flow is gone. He's 3 months behind on payroll, and 2 projects have stalled. If he can't secure $200,000 in working capital by next week, he'll likely have to declare bankruptcy. Do you have a list of his creditors? Mainly building material suppliers and the bank, Arthur said, pushing up his glasses. The most difficult one is the $80,000 debt to Croft Enterprises. You know what Julian Croft is like. I sneered. Julian Croft, a notorious shark in the industry, known for preying on small businesses. Look into Croft's cash flow for the past 6 months, especially any dealings with Michael's competitors. You suspect something? Michael doesn't have the clout to get on Croft's bad side on his own. Someone must be setting him up. I rubbed my temples. When they arrive tomorrow, you'll be here to observe. After Arthur left, I tossed and turned, unable to sleep. At 3 in the morning, I went to my study and opened the safe. On the top shelf was a yellowed medical file. Michael had suffered a sudden case of meningitis when he was 12. I had stood vigil outside the ICU for 3 days and 3 nights, signing 7 separate critical condition notices. I had sworn then that I would never let my son suffer again. Now, it seemed, I had overprotected him. At 9 o'clock sharp, Arthur arrived. We had just finished discussing our strategy when the doorbell rang. On the monitor, Michael was dressed in a sharp suit, Jessica was in a designer dress, and even Leo was wearing a little blazer. They were a world away from the people I had seen last night. I changed into some casual loungewear and had Arthur open the door. "Mom!" Michael cried, rushing in to hug me. I sidestepped him. Jessica's face was wreathed in smiles. "Mom, yesterday was all a misunderstanding. We didn't know you. You didn't know I had money," I finished with a cold smile. "If I didn't have money, then everything you said last night was what you truly felt, right?" Leo ran over and hugged my leg. "Grandma, Daddy, and Mommy had a huge fight last night. They were yelling really loud." Jessica yanked Leo back. "Honey, don't say such things." Then she turned back to me with a fawning smile. "Mom, we were so blind. Please don't hold it against us younger folks." I looked at Michael. "I hear your company is in trouble." His face changed. "How? How did you know?" "Answer me." It's a small problem," he stammered. "Just a cash flow issue. I need $200,000. $200,000? Michael's eyes widened. You're willing to help me?" I didn't answer. Instead, I turned to Arthur. "Show him the documents." Arthur produced a file. "This is a loan agreement. $200,000 at an annual interest rate of 8% for a term of 1 year. The collateral will be 51% of your company's shares." Michael's face went from red to white. "Mom, you're trying to take over my company." "You don't have to sign," I said calmly. Jessica snatched the papers and scanned them. "Mom, we're family. Why do we need to be so formal? You only have one son. Everything will be his eventually anyway. Sign it or don't." "It's up to you," I said, rising and walking to the balcony. "Arthur will handle the details." They argued in the living room for half an hour. In the end, with a trembling hand, Michael signed his name. As they were leaving, Jessica tried to curry favor again. "Mom, when are you coming home to live with us? I'll prepare the best room for you. That won't be necessary. I'm quite comfortable here. After closing the door, Arthur shook his head. Eleanor, why go through all this trouble? Why not just help him directly? Help him directly? I gave a bitter laugh. Then he'll never grow up. That afternoon, I changed into casual clothes and went to the local community center. Since retiring, I'd been volunteering here, teaching financial literacy to seniors. No one knew I was a former finance executive. They just knew me as a somewhat educated retired lady. Today's topic was preventing financial scams. I had just finished my presentation when a familiar voice spoke up. Excuse me, are those high-yield investment platforms really something to avoid? I looked up and saw a face I hadn't seen in years, Clara. She had been my assistant, but she quit 5 years ago after her husband cheated on her and they divorced. I'd lost touch with her since. She looked much older, the lines around her eyes deeper than I remembered. She was wearing a cheap shirt and washed-out jeans. Miss Pett, I almost blurted out her name. Generally speaking, you should be wary of anything promising returns over 8%. She stared at me for a few seconds, then her eyes widened in recognition. Elian. I gave a slight shake of my head, and she immediately understood. The lady is right. I'll be careful. After the class, we met in the courtyard behind the center. Miss Vance, is it really you? Clara asked, grabbing my hand excitedly. What are you? Retired. Just finding things to do, I said, looking her over. And you? Are you doing okay? Her smile vanished. I haven't been able to find a steady job since the divorce. I've been working odd jobs to support my daughter. Last month, our landlord raised the rent, and we were almost on the street. How old is your daughter? 8. She goes to the same school as Leo. She suddenly remembered something. Oh, in fact, Leo and Maya were on cleanup duty together yesterday. It's a small world, I said, thinking for a moment. A friend of mine has a company that's hiring for IT support. The pay isn't amazing, but it's stable. Are you interested? Clara's eyes reddened. Miss Vance, Don't call me Miss Vance. Here, I'm just Eleanor, I said, patting her hand. Bring your resume to the Starbucks in the financial district at 10 o'clock tomorrow morning. I'll introduce you. On the way home, I had my driver take a detour to the neighborhood where Clara lived. It was a run-down tenement building, the hallways cluttered with junk, the paint peeling from the walls. The thought of her and her daughter living in a place like this made my heart ache. That evening, Michael called, his tone sycophantic. Mom, I got the money. Thank you so much. Jessica wants to invite you over for dinner tomorrow. She's going to cook herself. I have an appointment tomorrow, I said coolly. Maybe next week. After hanging up, I opened my laptop and searched for Croft Enterprises' recent transactions. Sure enough, I found it. Last month, Julian Croft had entered into a strategic partnership with a company called Morgan Renovations. And the owner of Morgan Renovations was none other than Michael's biggest competitor, Derek Morgan. Too much of a coincidence. I called Arthur. Check the relationship between Derek Morgan and Julian Croft. And have someone keep an eye on Michael's company. The next day, I met Clara at Starbucks and introduced her to my friend in reality, the CEO of a tech company I was the majority shareholder of. The interview went surprisingly well. Although Clara hadn't worked formally in 5 years, she had been teaching herself to code, and her technical skills were even better than before. You can start next Monday, $72,000 a year, with full benefits. The HR manager offered her the job on the spot. Clara was so excited she could barely speak. Eleanor, I don't know how to thank you. Working hard is the best way to thank me, I said with a smile. By the way, who picks up Maya from school? Usually, I ask a neighbor for help, but she's moving away next week. Clara trailed off. I have a small, empty apartment near Leo's school. You can stay there for now. I'll deduct the rent from your salary. I didn't give her a chance to refuse. It's settled. You can move today. Clara and Maya had so few belongings that everything fit into a single taxi. The apartment was small but clean and bright. As soon as Maya walked in, she cheered, Mommy, we have a new home. Watching the little girl dance around the room, I thought of Michael when he was a child. We lived in a basement back then, but he would cover the damp walls with chalk drawings of the Sunday, Grandma Eleanor. Maya suddenly ran up to me. Are you Leo's grandma? Yes, I am. Are you and Leo friends? Maya nodded vigorously. Leo said he misses you a lot. He said his daddy won't let him call you. Clara quickly interrupted. Maya, don't say such things. I knelt to be at eye level with Maya. What else did Leo say? He said his mommy and daddy fight all the time at night. They said now that grandma has money, they have to get grandma to come back, Maya repeated innocently. Clara looked mortified. Miss Vance, she's just a child, she doesn't know. Call me Eleanor, I corrected her. Then I said to Maya, from now on, why don't you and Leo come over to Grandma's place to do your homework after school? I have lots of picture books. Really? That's great, Maya cheered. As I was leaving, Clara walked me to the elevator, hesitating. If you want to say something, just say it, I said, pressing the button. Miss Eleanor. She bit her lip. Michael. He doesn't know you. He doesn't know how much money you have. I gave a bitter smile. It's precisely because I have too much money that I raised a son like him. The elevator arrived. I stepped inside, looking at Clara's worried face. Don't worry, I know what I'm doing. Take good care of Maya, and don't be late on Monday. As the doors closed, I let out a long breath. Helping Clara had lifted my spirits. At least there was still someone in the world who understood gratitude. Back home, I opened my laptop and pulled up the live feed from the security cameras I'd had installed in Michael's office. For a $200,000 loan, a little surveillance wasn't too much to ask, was it? On the screen, Michael was in his office, flirting with a young, heavily made-up woman. Her hand was on his thigh. I turned off the feed and sent a message to Arthur. Find out who Michael's personal assistant is. I took a screenshot of the woman and sent it. This woman, less than half an hour later, Arthur replied. Tiffany Miller, 25 years old, hired 3 months ago. Previously, an administrator at Morgan Renovations. She's Derek Morgan's sister-in-law. Just as I thought. I let out a cold laugh. My foolish son being played for a complete fool, and he didn't even know it. Monday morning, I arrived at the community center half an hour early. Last week's financial literacy class had been well received, and the center's director, Mr. Davis, wanted me to add more sessions. Mrs. Vance, having you teach here is such a blessing for our center, Mr. Davis said, rubbing his hands together. After last week's class, several seniors told me they finally understand how their pensions work. It's my pleasure, I said, accepting the new schedule. Today, I'll be talking about family financial planning. By the way, Mr. Davis lowered his voice. A Mr. Croft has been asking about you. He said he's very interested in the course and wants to invest in our center. My heart skipped a beat. Mr. Croft? Full name? Julian Croft. A big-shot owner of a construction supply company, Mr. Davis said, his face full of awe. I never thought we'd attract someone of his stature to our little place. I clutched my teaching notes tightly. When is he coming? He said this afternoon. Before Mr. Davis could finish, there was a commotion at the entrance. Several staff members were gathered around a well-dressed, middle-aged man. It was Julian Croft himself. Mrs. Vance, a pleasure to finally meet you, Croft said, striding over and extending his hand. I never expected to run into you here. I reluctantly shook his hand. Mr. Croft is interested in community education too? Giving back to the community, you know? He said with a wide smile, but his eyes were as cold as a snake's. Especially getting to hear a lecture from the legendary Eleanor Vance. Mrs. Vance. It's truly an honor. He knew who I was. I maintained my smile. You're too kind, Mr. Croft. I'm just a retired old woman. Not at all. Everyone in the industry knows the stories of your legendary career, Croft said, leaning in closer and lowering his voice. I wonder if I might have the honor of buying you a cup of coffee. There are a few things I'd like to ask your advice on. Mr. Davis stood by, his jaw on the floor. I glanced at my watch. I can spare 20 minutes after class. Croft stepped back, satisfied. Then I shall wait. I was distracted throughout the entire class, constantly trying to figure out Croft's motives. The moment the class ended, he eagerly approached me. That was wonderful, Mrs. Vance. I've reserved a table at the tea house next door. In the tea house, Croft personally poured me a cup of tea. "Mrs. Vance, let's not beat around the bush. I can help with your son's company." "Oh?" I took a sip of tea. "How so? That $80,000 debt?" "I'll wipe it clean," he said, his eyes narrowing. "All you have to do is take your hands off that parcel of land on the east side." So that was it. The east side land development was the last project I had managed before I retired. It was now being developed by a company I secretly controlled. Croft had been trying to get a piece of it for months. "You must be mistaken, Mr. Croft," I said, putting down my cup. "My son's affairs have nothing to do with me. As for the East Side project, I'm just a retired old woman now." "Why play dumb, Mrs. Vance?" Croft sneered. "Who do you think gave Michael that $200,000? Who do you think holds 51% of his company's shares?" My heart pounded. How could he know that? "There are no secrets in business, Mrs. Vance," Croft said, as if reading my mind. "Derek Morgan's sister-in-law is practically living in Michael's pocket." I suppressed my rage. "So you came here today to threaten an old woman?" No, Croft said, his smile returning. "I came here to propose a partnership. You help me get the East Side project, and I'll guarantee your son's company thrives. Otherwise..." "Otherwise? What?" "Otherwise, tomorrow, creditors will file to freeze all of your son's company assets, including that 51% stake." Croft leaned in, his breath smelling of alcohol. "You don't want to see your son go bankrupt, do you?" I stood up. The tea was nice. "Thank you for your hospitality." As soon as I left the tea house, I called Arthur. "Find out how far things have gone between Michael and Tiffany Miller, and investigate every connection Julian Croft has to the East Side project." After hanging up, I saw a text from Clara. "Eleanor, I've started my new job. The company is great, and Maya loves our new home. Thank you." Attached was a photo of Maya doing her homework at a small desk. The picture calmed me down. Business is war, but I was no longer the same Eleanor Vance. I now had a more important battlefield: my family. At 4 o'clock that afternoon, I was waiting at the school gate as planned. Maya ran out first. "Grandma Eleanor." Then came Leo. His eyes lit up when he saw me, but then he shrank back, glancing at Jessica, who was standing behind him. Jessica was unusually pleasant today. "Mom, you came to pick up Leo. That saves me a trip." She pushed Leo towards me. "I made pot roast for dinner tonight. Why don't you join us?" "No, thank you. I'm taking the children to my place," I said, my tone cool. "I'll bring Leo back tonight." A flicker of annoyance crossed Jessica's face, but it was quickly replaced by a smile. "That's fine too. Leo, you be good and listen to your grandma, okay?" Leo nodded timidly. As soon as Jessica was gone, he threw himself into my arms. "Grandma, I missed you so much." I held one child's hand in each of mine as we walked to the car. Maya chattered away about her day at school, while Leo held on to my hand tightly, as if afraid I would disappear. Back at my apartment, as I was preparing snacks while the two children did their homework, Leo suddenly asked, "Grandma, Dad said you're really rich. Is that true?" My hand trembled, and I almost spilled the milk. "What else did your dad say?" He said we have to make you happy, so you'll give us your money," Leo said, looking down. "My mommy said you have to love someone for who they are, not for their money," Maya piped in. A wave of warmth washed over me. I pulled both children into a hug. "Maya's right. You should love a person for who they are, not for their money." Leo looked up at me. "Grandma, I love you, and it's not because of your money." My eyes welled up. "I know, sweetie. Grandma knows." When I took Leo home that evening, Jessica enthusiastically invited me in. The apartment was spotless. There were fresh flowers on the dining table, and Michael was standing by, dressed in a suit, like a soldier awaiting inspection. "Mom, I've done a lot of thinking," Michael began, wringing his hands. "I was so immature before." I cut him off. "Leo, go to your room and finish your homework." Once the child had left, I looked directly at Michael. "Who is Tiffany Miller?" The color drained from Michael's face. How did you know?" "Julian Croft paid me a visit," I said coldly. "He knows everything about you and Derek Morgan's sister-in-law." Jessica shrieked. Michael! You told me you broke it off with her. Michael stammered. Not only did he not break it off, he gave that woman $10,000, I added. From the company account. Jessica grabbed a vase and threw it at Michael. Divorce. I can't live like this anymore. I turned and left, the sounds of their violent argument and Leo's crying following me out the door. I closed the door, took a deep breath, and sent a message to Arthur. Prepare divorce papers. Jessica might need them. The next day, Clara called, her voice trembling. Eleanor, the company suddenly gave me a raise and my own office. Was that you? Your abilities earned it? I said. I was watching the security feed from Michael's company. He was currently in a hushed conversation with Tiffany Miller about something. Just focus on your work and don't overthink it. After hanging up, I zoomed in on the feed, reading Michael's lips. My mom's money. Find a way. Tiffany Miller smiled and nodded, then handed him a USB drive. I immediately called the IT department of the tech company. Check Michael Vance's company for any unusual data transfers recently. Half an hour later, the results were in. The company's core client database had been copied in its entirety the night before. The computer used for the transfer was logged in under Michael's account. I sneered. My dear son, willing to sell out his own company for money. Julian Croft showed up at my financial literacy class again that afternoon, sitting in the back row, a smirk on his face. After class, he blocked my path. Have you considered my offer, Mrs. Vance? You have some nerve, Mr. Croft, I said, looking him straight in the eye. Having Derek Morgan's sister-in-law seduce my son to steal business secrets. Croft was unfazed. Business is war. Didn't you use a honey trap or two in your day, Mrs. Vance? I'll give you 3 days, I said in a low voice. Withdraw the debt claim against my son's company. Otherwise what? Croft asked, his tone challenging. Otherwise, the evidence of you misappropriating pension funds will be on the SEC's desk tomorrow morning, I said, holding up my phone, which displayed a photo of him in a secret meeting with a certain official from the Social Security Administration. The color drained from Croft's face. How? How did you? There are no secrets in business, I said, throwing his own words back at him before turning and walking away. That evening, I arranged to meet with Jessica alone. She arrived with red, swollen eyes and immediately started crying about all of Michael's transgressions. Do you want a divorce? I asked directly. Jessica was taken aback. If you divorce him, I can guarantee you get full custody of Leo and a fair settlement, I said, handing her a folder. But on one condition. Jessica wiped her tears. What condition? Tell me the truth, I said, staring into her eyes. Did you and Michael genuinely want to repair your relationship with me, or did you just want my money? Jessica's lips trembled. Finally, she broke down, sobbing. I was wrong, Mom. We were in so much debt, and Michael said if we could just make you happy. I had expected it, but hearing it confirmed still felt like a knife to the heart. I took back the folder. I have the divorce papers ready. It's up to you whether you sign them or not. Back home, I opened the safe and took out a photo of my late husband. Oh, Frank, I whispered. Did I do the wrong thing? How did our son turn into this? In the photo, my husband was smiling, just as he had 20 years ago. We were poor then, but at least we had love. The morning sun streamed through the sheer curtains into the bedroom. I woke early and checked my phone. There was a new message from Arthur. Julian Croft had withdrawn the debt claim against Michael's company overnight, but now Derek Morgan was making a move. I replied, continue surveillance, especially on Tiffany Miller. Today was Wednesday, and I was scheduled to pick up Leo and Maya from school. But at 10 in the morning, Clara called, her voice frantic. Eleanor, Maya has a high fever. The school sent her to the hospital. I had my driver take me to the hospital immediately. In the emergency room, Maya was lying on a gurney, her face flushed, while Clara stood by, wringing her hands and crying. What did the doctor say? I asked, feeling Maya's hot forehead. They suspect pneumonia. She needs to be admitted for observation, Clara said, her voice choked with tears. It's all my fault. I was working late last night and didn't notice she kicked off her blankets. I glanced around the crowded emergency room. then took out my phone and made a call. 10 minutes later, the hospital's vice president personally came down. "Mrs. Vance, please don't worry. We'll arrange for a VIP room immediately." Clara stared at me, shocked. "Eleanor." "I'll explain later," I said, patting her hand. "Let's just take care of Maya first." An hour later, Maya was moved to a spacious private room and was being attended to by the head of pediatrics. Clara sat by the bed, looking bewildered. "Eleanor, who are you, really?" "I used to work in finance. I have some connections," I said dismissively. "You just stay here and be with Maya. I'll take care of things with your company." After getting them settled, I rushed to the school to pick up Leo. Jessica was already there. When she saw me, her expression was complicated. "Mom, about yesterday. Maya's in the hospital. I'm taking Leo to see her," I said, cutting off her apology. "Have you thought about the divorce?" Jessica looked down. I'm still thinking." Leo ran out. When he heard Maya was sick, he was frantic. "I want to see Maya. She's my best friend." At the hospital, Maya's fever had broken, and she was sleeping. Leo tiptoed to her bedside and placed his favorite dinosaur toy on her pillow. "When you get better, we can play together." Clara was moved to tears. She pulled me out into the hallway. "Eleanor, I don't know what to say. The hospital bills. I'll pay you back, I promise." "Don't worry about that," I said, handing her a credit card. "The hospital is billing everything to my account. Use this for any other expenses. The pin is Maya's birthday." Clara refused to take it. "I can't. You've already done too much." "Consider it an employee benefit," I said, pressing it into her hand. "Maya needs you. Don't be distracted by money." Just then, my phone rang. It was Michael. I stepped away to answer. "What is it?" "Mom, it's bad," Michael said, his voice panicked. "Derek Morgan is suing me for stealing trade secrets. The court is going to seize the company's assets." I had expected this. "You did steal them, didn't you?" There was a few seconds of silence on the other end. You knew." "I know a lot more than you think," I said coldly, "including Tiffany Miller's real identity." "Mom, I was a fool," Michael said, his voice cracking. "That bastard Derek set me up. Now Croft has backed off, and I have nowhere to turn." "When is the court going to seize the assets?" "Tomorrow morning." Michael's voice trembled. "Mom, you have to save me. Be at my apartment tonight at 8 o'clock. I hung up and went back into the hospital room. Leo was quietly telling a story to the sleeping Maya. Clara looked at me. "Eleanor, is something wrong?" "Just some family matters," I said with a weak smile. "You stay here with Maya tonight. I'll take Leo home with me." "Grandma Eleanor." Leo suddenly looked up. "Did Daddy make you angry again?" Both Clara and I froze. Leo continued. "Last night, I heard Mommy and Daddy fighting. Daddy said he was going to trick you out of your money." Clara stood up awkwardly. "I'll go get some hot water." I knelt to look Leo in the eye. "What else did you hear?" "Mommy said she was going to get a lawyer to prove that Grandma's mind is going." Leo bit his lip. "Grandma, your mind isn't going, is it?" My heart turned to ice. I couldn't believe they would stoop so low. I pulled Leo into a hug. "Grandma is just fine," I said softly. "Don't you worry." At 8 o'clock that evening, Michael arrived, his face pale, his suit rumpled, and smelling of alcohol. He fell to his knees the moment he walked in. "Mom, save me." "Get up," I said sharply. "Solve your problems like a man. Stop kneeling all the time." Michael slumped onto the sofa and incoherently explained what had happened, how Derek had set him up, how Tiffany had seduced him, and how, in a moment of weakness, he had copied the client data. "Now Derek is turning it around on me, saying I stole his company's secrets," Michael said, grabbing his hair. "Once the court freezes my assets, I'm finished." "Do you know why Julian Croft suddenly dropped his claim?" I asked. Michael shook his head blankly. "Because I got some leverage on him," I said with a sneer. "Business is war, and you went to the gambling table without even knowing what cards your opponent was holding." "Mom, I know I was wrong." Michael started crying again. "Please, just help me this one last time." "I can help you," I said, producing a folder. "But there are conditions." Michael eagerly grabbed the folder. After reading the contents, his face paled. This is too much. 75% of the company's shares go to you, and I have to fire Tiffany? Not only that, I added, you have to accept a professional management team, and for the next 3 years, all major company decisions will require my approval. That's the same as just giving you the company. Michael stood up, furious. You can refuse, I said calmly, and wait for the court to seize everything tomorrow. Michael paced back and forth in the living room. Finally, he gritted his teeth and signed. Mom, you're heartless. Compared to what you've done to me, this is mercy, I said, taking the documents. Now, let's talk about how you and Jessica plan to prove my mind is going. Michael's face went white. How? How did you? Leo heard you, I said, staring into his eyes. Michael, I am your mother. And you. It was Jessica's idea. Michael quickly tried to shift the blame. She said if we could get a doctor to declare you senile, we could take control of your assets. A sharp pain shot through my chest. I had to grab the sofa to steady myself. This was the son I had worked so hard to raise. For money, he was willing to have his own mother committed. Get out, I said, pointing to the door. My lawyer will be in court tomorrow. Mom, you can't just leave me to die, Michael pleaded, falling to his knees again. I've saved you too many times, I said, pressing the security button to call the front desk. Now get out. After the building security escorted Michael away, I collapsed onto the balcony chair and stared blankly at the night sky. My phone rang. It was Clara. Eleanor. Maya's awake. She wants to talk to you. Grandma Eleanor. Maya's weak voice came through the phone. Thank you. Leo said you're the best grandma in the world. The tears finally came. You just rest, sweetie. Grandma will come see you tomorrow. After hanging up, I made a decision. I called Arthur. Prepare 2 sets of documents. One is the legal framework for establishing an educational foundation. The other is a plan for the bankruptcy and restructuring of Michael's company. The next morning, I went to the hospital. Maya was much better and was looking at a picture book with Leo. Clara pulled me aside. Eleanor, HR at my company said they're promoting me to a management position with double the salary. It's so sudden. Your abilities earned it, I said, patting her hand. By the way, are you interested in being my personal assistant? Clara's eyes widened. But I don't know anything. You're honest, hardworking, and you know what gratitude is. That's enough, I said with a smile. Think about it. No rush. I left the hospital and went straight to the courthouse. The bankruptcy hearing for Michael's company was in session. I was there as the primary creditor. When the judge announced the freezing of the company's assets, Michael's face was ashen. From the gallery, Derek Morgan and Tiffany Miller smiled triumphantly. During the recess, I deliberately walked past them. Tiffany pretended not to know me, while Derek said mockingly, Well, old lady, your son is finished. Is he? I held up my phone, displaying a text conversation between him and Julian Croft, discussing how to split the profits. Let's see who's finished first. Derek's face changed. He quickly pulled Tiffany away. Arthur walked over. Eleanor, everything is ready. The foundation documents just need your signature. I carefully read through the papers. The New Hope Education Foundation. Initial funding of $20 million to support the education of children from single-parent families. Excellent. After signing, I sent a text to Clara. Have you thought about it? The foundation needs an operations director. 3 minutes later, she replied. If you'll have me, I'd be honored to try. Thank you for your trust. I walked out of the courthouse into the bright sunlight. Michael was slumped on the steps, his suit wrinkled, his tie askew. When he saw me, he staggered to his feet. Mom, I'm finished. No, you're just getting started, I said, handing him an envelope. Inside was a key to a small apartment and $10,000 in cash. Start over, like a real man. Michael took the envelope with a trembling hand. Mom, I'm sorry. Don't say you're sorry. Show me, I said, turning and walking away without looking back. The work to set up the foundation began in earnest. With Clara discharged from the hospital, Maya temporarily stayed with me. She and Leo went to and from school together every day, inseparable like brother and sister. After she found out Michael's company had gone bankrupt, Jessica's attitude underwent a subtle change. She stopped mentioning divorce and started showing up with homemade snacks, conveniently at times when Clara and Maya were also there. "Mom, look how cute Maya is," Jessica said one day, combing Maya's hair. "I've always wanted a daughter." Clara protectively pulled Maya closer. "Miss Miller, we should be getting home." "What's the rush?" Jessica's smile was strained. "It's been so long since I've had a chat with Mom." "Jessica," I said, getting straight to the point, "what is it you really want to say?" She put down the comb and suddenly knelt on the floor. "Mom, I know I was wrong. I was possessed before. Please forgive me. Leo can't be without a father." Maya, frightened, hid behind Clara. Leo just looked at his mother in confusion. "Mommy, why are you crying?" I had Clara take the children out of the room, then helped Jessica to her feet. "I can't help Michael. Adults have to be responsible for their own choices." "But," Jessica sobbed, "the creditors are at our door every day. Leo and I are afraid to even go home." I had anticipated this. "I have a small apartment on the west side. You can stay there for now." I handed her a debit card. "This has $5,000 a month for your basic expenses." Jessica took the card, her expression complicated. "Mom, why are you helping us?" "After everything Because Leo is my grandson," I said, looking her in the eye. "But remember, this is the last time." After Jessica left, I called Arthur. "Look into Michael's debts. Try to take care of the high-interest loans." That evening, Clara came over with a draft plan for the foundation. Watching her explain the details with such focus, I saw a reflection of my younger self. That same resilience, the willingness to do anything for one's child. "Eleanor, I think we can adjust this part of the budget." Clara pointed to a line item on the report. "You're the operations director now. It's your call," I said with a smile. She looked up, her eyes slightly red. "Eleanor, why are you being so good to me?" "Because you and Maya have shown me what real family is," I said, gazing out at the night sky. "That pure love, untainted by money." Clara was silent for a moment. Then she said suddenly, "Eleanor, there's something I've been meaning to tell you. About Michael." My heart tightened. "What is it?" "Yesterday, Maya said Leo was crying at school. He said his dad was going to take him to meet his new mom," Clara said cautiously. "I was worried Michael might be with Tiffany Miller." I finished with a sneer. "She's just Derek Morgan's pawn." "No, not her." Clara shook her head. "Maya said Leo mentioned an Auntie Vanessa." "Vanessa? A relative of Julian Croft?" I immediately called Arthur. "Check if Julian Croft has any sisters or female relatives who have been in contact with Michael recently." After hanging up, I noticed Clara hesitating again. "There's more." "Eleanor." "About the foundation. I'm so grateful, but..." She bit her lip. "I don't want you to think I'm doing this for the money." "I never thought that," I said, taking her hand. "From the day 5 years ago when you refused that kickback from a supplier, I knew what kind of person you were." Clara's eyes widened. You remember that?" "I remember every person who does the right thing," I said with a smile. "Now, help me look at this." I opened my laptop. On the screen was a business plan titled, "The New Hope Home, a mutual support community for single-parent families." "Oh my gosh," Clara gasped. "This is amazing. But the investment would be huge." "Money is not an issue," I said, clicking to the next slide. "The issue is, are you willing to be the project lead?" Clara was stunned, tears welling in her eyes. "Eleanor, Just then, the doorbell rang. The security monitor showed Michael, and standing beside him was, indeed, an unfamiliar woman. I had Clara go into the study. Then I opened the door. "Mom!" Michael forced a smile. "This is Vanessa, my friend. She's Julian Croft's niece." Vanessa was dressed in designer clothes, her makeup flawless. She extended a hand. "It's a pleasure to meet you, Mrs. Vance. Michael talks about you all the time." I ignored her hand. "What do you want?" "Mom, Vanessa works at a bank. She heard you were starting a foundation and wanted to offer some professional advice," Michael said, his eyes darting around. That won't be necessary. I have a professional team, I said coldly. Michael, has your company's bankruptcy liquidation been completed? Michael's face changed. Mom, not in front of a guest. What guest? I asked deliberately. Isn't this Miss Croft the candidate for your new mom? Vanessa took a step back, embarrassed. Michael, you didn't tell me your mother knew. Get out, I said, pointing to the door. Both of you. Michael's face suddenly twisted in anger. You old hag, I try to be nice and you spit in my face. It's an honor that a woman like Vanessa would even look at you. Vanessa pulled at his arm. Stop it, let's go. After they left, Clara came out of the study, looking worried. Eleanor. I'm fine, I said. In fact, I felt a sense of relief. I had finally seen my son's true colors. The next day, I met with Jessica and told her what had happened. After hearing the story, she was surprisingly calm. I already knew. And you? I was waiting for the right time, Jessica said, a look of determination in her eyes. Mom, I want to work with you. On what? The divorce case, Jessica said, pulling a USB drive from her purse. This has records of Michael and Vanessa staying in hotels, and proof that he was transferring assets. I want to fight for full custody of Leo. I took the USB drive. What changed your mind? Because I've seen Michael for who he really is, Jessica said with a bitter laugh. And I've also seen how genuinely you care for Maya and her mother. If something ever happens to me, I want to know Leo will have someone who truly loves him. I nodded. I'll arrange the lawyer. A week later, the New Hope Education Foundation was officially launched. At the press conference, I announced the initial investment of $20 million to support the education of children from single-parent families. Clara, as the operations director, made her debut and handled herself with grace and professionalism. In the audience, I saw Michael and Vanessa. Michael's face was dark, while Vanessa kept staring at Clara. After the press conference, Vanessa intercepted Clara. Miss Peterson, is it? I'm Vanessa Croft from City Commercial Bank. I was wondering if you'd be interested in discussing a partnership. Clara politely declined. I'm sorry, the foundation's financial partnerships are already in place. Vanessa sneered. Don't be so quick to refuse. I hear you have a lovely daughter. She's in the 2nd grade at Lincoln Elementary, isn't she? The color drained from Clara's face. I immediately stepped forward. Miss Croft, threatening someone is a criminal offense. Do I need to call the police? Vanessa stalked off, but I knew this wasn't over. That night, I hired extra security to protect Maya and Leo. Sure enough, Clara got a call from the school, saying a stranger had tried to pick up Maya but was stopped by security. It was Vanessa, Clara said, her whole body trembling. She would actually stoop to going after a child. I immediately called Arthur. Gather evidence. I'm suing Vanessa Croft for harassment and making threats. After hanging up, I looked out at the night sky and made a decision. It was time to end this. The next day, I met Julian Croft at the tea house. He arrived with 2 bodyguards, his demeanor arrogant. Well, Mrs. Vance, you've finally come to your senses. I want you and your niece to stay away from my family, I said directly. Otherwise. I pushed a folder across the table. Croft opened it. As he read, his face grew darker and darker. How did you get these? The evidence of you misappropriating pension funds. Enough to put you away for 10 years, I said coldly, and your niece's records of illegal lending practices. I'm sure the Banking Commission would be very interested. Sweat beaded on Croft's forehead. Mrs. Vance, we can talk about this. My terms are simple, I said, holding up 3 fingers. 1. You and Vanessa Croft will never come near my family again. 2. Derek Morgan will return all the data he stole from my son's company. 3. The East Side project, I want the 10% stake you hold. I'll buy it at market value. Croft gritted his teeth. This is highway robbery. No. This is a fair trade, I said, standing up. You have until noon tomorrow to give me your answer. Otherwise, these documents will be automatically sent to the SEC and the Banking Commission. After leaving the tea house, I went to pick up Leo and Maya from school. The 2 children were playing on the playground and ran over joyfully when they saw me. Grandma, I got a perfect score on my essay today. Leo held up his notebook proudly. I opened it and read the title, My Grandma. My grandma is the best grandma in the world. She doesn't just love me, she helps lots of other kids too. My mom says my grandma has money, but I think the most valuable thing about my grandma is her heart. My eyes grew moist. This child was perhaps my only solace. Grandma Eleanor, Maya tugged on my sleeve. When I grow up, I want to be just like you and help people who need help. I knelt and hugged both of them. You just need to be yourselves. Back home, I got a call from Arthur. Julian Croft had agreed to all my terms. The papers were already signed. Derek Morgan had also returned the data. Does Michael know? I asked. He knows, but… Arthur hesitated. He said he doesn't need your charity. I gave a bitter smile. Let him be. That evening, Jessica brought Leo over for dinner. At the table, Leo suddenly asked, Grandma, Daddy says you don't love him anymore. Is that true? I put down my chopsticks. Grandma will always love your daddy, but sometimes, loving someone doesn't mean enabling their mistakes. Leo nodded, as if he understood. Jessica looked at me with a hint of admiration in her eyes. Mom, I signed the divorce papers. The hearing is next week. Will custody be an issue? Michael voluntarily gave it up, Jessica said with a bitter smile. He said having a child would make it difficult for him to remarry. I shook my head, feeling a deep sorrow for my son. He had no idea what a precious thing he had lost. Before bed, I sent a text to Clara. Next week, I need you to come with me to the orphanage to select a site for the New Hope home. She replied, Of course, Eleanor. Also, Maya wants to invite Leo over for a playdate this weekend. Is that okay? I looked at the message and smiled. Outside of my broken family, new connections were forming and new hope was sprouting. Perhaps this was life's answer for me. On a weekend morning, I was doing some simple stretches on the balcony when my phone vibrated. It was a message from Arthur. Eleanor Michael just filed for personal bankruptcy at the bank. I sighed and replied, Keep an eye on it. Turning back into the living room, I found Clara and Maya had already arrived and were setting the table with Leo. The two children were chirping like happy little sparrows. Eleanor, breakfast is ready, Clara said with a smile, handing me a warm cup of coffee. I just got it from the cafe downstairs, the one you like. I took the cup, feeling the warmth spread through my palm. This simple gesture of care was more comforting to me than any gourmet meal. Grandma, try the pancakes I made. Leo proudly pointed to a plate of irregularly shaped pancakes. It took him 3 eggs to get it right, Maya added immediately. I took a bite. They were a little burnt, but I smiled and praised him anyway. They're delicious, much better than Grandma's. Suddenly, the doorbell rang. The security monitor showed it was Michael. I had Clara take the children out to the balcony, then opened the door. Michael looked haggard, his suit wrinkled, his eyes bloodshot. Mom, his voice was hoarse. Can I borrow some money? I let him in. How much? $50,000, he said, looking down. Vanessa said if I can just invest another $50,000. So she can do what? I cut him off. Continue to scam you? Michael looked up sharply. Mom, how can you say that? Vanessa is genuinely trying to help me. Genuinely? I sneered. Then why did she disappear the moment you filed for bankruptcy? The color drained from Michael's face. You're having me followed? I'm protecting you, even though you don't deserve it, I said, producing a folder. Here is a check for $50,000. But there are conditions. Michael eagerly grabbed the folder. After reading the contents, his face turned ashen. This is outrageous. The document stated clearly that the $50,000 loan required him to sign an agreement severing all ties with Vanessa Croft and accepting financial oversight. Sign it or don't, I said, turning to walk towards the balcony. I'll give you 10 minutes to think about it. Through the glass door, I watched Michael pace back and forth in the living room, sometimes running his hands through his hair, sometimes punching the sofa cushions. Finally, he picked up the pen and signed. Mom, I signed it, he said, walking to the balcony door. He suddenly saw Clara and the children. What? What are they doing here? Clara stood up awkwardly. Hello, Mr. Vance. Clara is my assistant now, I said, taking the document and checking the signature. "You can go. The money will be transferred on schedule." Michael looked at Clara, then at Maya playing happily with Leo, a complex emotion flashing in his eyes. "Mom, you treat a stranger better than you treat me." "Clara earns her pay through her own hard work," I said, looking him straight in the eye. "All you do is ask for handouts." Michael stormed out, slamming the door behind him. Leo asked timidly, "Grandma, is Daddy angry again?" I stroked his head. "It's okay, sweetie. Daddy just needs some time to think things through." That afternoon, I took the children to the newly opened community library. Maya and Leo devoured books in the children's section, while Clara was busy discussing a partnership with the librarian for the new Hope home. "Mrs. Vance," the librarian said enthusiastically, "we would be thrilled to partner with the new Hope home and provide reading support for single-parent families." Just then, my phone rang. It was Arthur. "Eleanor, Michael took the money and went straight to Vanessa Croft's apartment. Our private investigator has photos." I opened the email. The photo showed Michael and Vanessa kissing on a balcony. On the table next to them was the $50,000 check. "Should we take action?" Arthur asked. "No," I said calmly. "Let him face the consequences himself." After hanging up, I saw Clara's worried expression. "Eleanor, is something wrong?" "It's nothing," I said, putting my phone away. "By the way, is the visit to the orphanage next week all arranged?" "Yes, it's all set." Clara hesitated for a moment. "Eleanor, if you need any help," I patted her hand. "Having you here is all the help I need." When I took Leo home that evening, Jessica told me some unexpected news. "Mom, Michael just came by to pack his things. He said he and Vanessa are moving to Florida to start a new business." "When are they leaving?" "On a flight tomorrow morning." Jessica bit her lip. He said he's not coming back." I nodded. "Take good care of Leo. If he's really gone, it might not be a bad thing for you." The next morning, Arthur called. "Eleanor, Michael, and Vanessa were arrested at the airport." "What happened?" "Vanessa Croft is wanted for financial fraud in several states. Michael was taken in as an accomplice." Arthur paused. "Do you want me to arrange for his bail?" I thought for a moment. "Let him sit in a cell and cool off for a few days." 3 days later, I went to the detention center to see Michael. He looked like he had aged 10 years. The moment he saw me, he burst into tears. "Mom, I was scammed. Vanessa isn't a bank executive, she's a professional con artist. And the $50,000? It's all gone," Michael sobbed, covering his face, "and she took out high-interest loans in my name." I looked at the son I had once been so proud of, my heart aching but also strangely calm. "Mom, save me." Michael grabbed my hand. "I know I was wrong. I really know it this time. This is the last time." I stood up. "Arthur will handle the bail. When you get out, report to the construction site on the east side. You'll start from the bottom." Michael was stunned. "The east side? Isn't that your?" "Yes. My project," I said, turning to leave. "Either start over through honest work or continue to be a failure. The choice is yours." Walking out of the detention center, the sunlight was so bright it hurt my eyes. Clara was waiting in the car. She handed me a bottle of water. "Eleanor, are you okay?" "Better than I thought," I said, taking the water. "By the way, the children at the orphanage have a performance next week. Remind me to bring a camera." Clara smiled and nodded. "It's already on your calendar. Also, do you want to attend Leo's parent-teacher conference?" "Of course," I said, fastening my seatbelt. "Jessica has been busy with work lately. I'll go." As the car headed towards the site for the new Hope home, I watched the scenery fly by. I suddenly realized that life never follows the script we write for it. But perhaps every deviation is a new beginning. The performance at the orphanage was more wonderful than I could have imagined. The children's costumes were made from recycled materials, the stage built from cardboard, but their joy was the most genuine thing in the world. Leo and Maya sat on either side of me, cheering for the performers. "Grandma, our class is next." Leo tugged on my hand excitedly. On stage, a group of 7- and 8-year-olds performed a short play about family. When a little girl delivered the line, "A home isn't a house, it's a place with love," my eyes welled up. Clara quietly handed me a tissue. Are you all right, Eleanor? I shook my head. I was just thinking about Michael when he was little. After the performance, the orphanage director gave us a tour of the building that would be converted into the new Hope Home. It was a 3-story building, old but structurally sound, with a small playground in the courtyard. This area can be converted into an activity room. That space is suitable for a counseling office, and the kitchen needs a complete renovation, Clara said, diligently taking notes and offering professional suggestions. Watching her focused profile, I could see the bright future of the new Hope Home. Grandma Eleanor, a little girl ran over and tugged on my sleeve. Can I come play here too? I knelt to be at her eye level. Of course you can. This place is being built for you. But I don't have a mommy or daddy. The little girl looked down. That's okay, I said, gently hugging her. Everyone here will love you. On the way back, Leo suddenly asked, Grandma, when is Daddy coming home? Soon, I said, stroking his hair. Do you miss him? Leo nodded, then shook his head. I do, but Mommy said Daddy did something wrong and has to be punished. From the front seat, Clara turned around. Leo, just because your dad made a mistake doesn't mean he doesn't love you. It's like when you get a math problem wrong. Your teacher corrects you, but she still likes you, right? Leo thought for a moment, then smiled. Yeah, I get it. Seeing Clara's gentle expression, a thought crossed my mind. This woman was not only capable at work, she also knew how to love a child. The next day, I went to inspect the East Side construction site. Officially, I was there to check on the project's progress. Unofficially, I was there to see Michael. After being released on bail, he had reported here, as I had instructed, to do the most basic job, inventorying building materials. The site was dusty and deafeningly loud. I found Michael in a corner. He was wearing a hard hat and gloves, sweating profusely as he counted steel rebar. He froze when he saw me, then lowered his head and continued to work. Is it hard? I asked. He mumbled a reply without looking up. Leo misses you. Michael's hands paused for a moment. I'm too ashamed to see him. Then do something to be proud of, I said, handing him a bottle of water. His birthday is next Sunday. I hope you'll be there. As I was leaving, the project manager, Mr. Thompson, caught up with me. Mrs. Vance, your son is a hard worker. I thought he wouldn't last 3 days. Give him more responsibility, I said, but no special treatment. Mr. Thompson nodded knowingly. Understood. Leo's birthday arrived. I prepared a small party at my home, inviting Maya, Clara, and a few of Leo's friends. Michael arrived on time, wearing a simple t-shirt and jeans, looking much better than the last time I had seen him. Daddy! Leo cheered, running into his arms. Michael hugged his son tightly, his voice choked with emotion. Happy birthday, son. Watching them, I quietly wiped a tear from the corner of my eye. Clara handed me a piece of cake. Have some, Eleanor. Maya and I made it together. The frosting was a little lopsided, but it was incredibly charming. I took a bite. It was perfectly sweet. Halfway through the party, Jessica appeared. She stood in the doorway, her expression complicated as she took in the happy scene. Mommy! Leo ran over and pulled her inside. Come have some cake. Jessica hesitated, glancing at Michael. He spoke first. Jessica, it's been a while. The atmosphere became a little awkward. Clara cleverly suggested the children go play a game on the balcony, leaving the space for us. I heard you're working at the construction site. Jessica broke the silence. Michael nodded. Yeah, starting from the bottom. That's good, Jessica paused. I got promoted. Sales manager. Congratulations, Michael said sincerely. Watching their polite exchange, I knew their marriage was beyond repair. But at least they had learned to be civil for Leo's sake. After the party, Michael stayed behind to help clean up. As he wiped down the table, he said, Mom, Mr. Thompson at the site said he's moving me to the budgeting department next week. That's good news, I said, feigning nonchalance. Work hard. Mom, Michael suddenly stopped what he was doing. I want to start over. Not for your money, but because I really want to be a decent person. I looked up at him and saw a long-lost flicker of determination in his eyes. For a moment, I saw the little boy who had once told me he wanted to be someone his mom could be proud of. "Show me," I said simply, but my heart had already softened. That night, I was looking through photos from the party, especially the one of Leo and Michael blowing out the candles together. The phone rang. It was Arthur. "Eleanor, Julian Croft is making a move." "What kind of move?" "He's using a shell corporation to buy the land adjacent to the New Hope home. He's planning to build a waste transfer station." I immediately understood his intention. This was his revenge, and he was willing to harm innocent children to get it. "Find out if there were any irregularities in the acquisition process," I said coldly, "and prepare the documents. I'm going to petition the city to rezone that land." After hanging up, I sent a text to Clara. "Be ready to go to City Hall with me tomorrow morning at 9. The next day, in a conference room at the Urban Planning Department, Julian Croft and I faced off once again. He smiled insincerely. "Well, Mrs. Vance, what a coincidence. I didn't know you were also interested in waste management." "I'm interested in protecting children," I said, turning on the projector and displaying the designs for the New Hope home, building your transfer station here. "You know exactly what the health impact on these children will be." Croft shrugged. "It's just business. May the best person win." "Is it?" I switched the slide, displaying evidence of the various violations in his acquisition process. "Is this also just business?" The meeting turned into a heated debate. In the end, the mayor made the final decision. That parcel of land is better suited for educational purposes. "Mr. Croft, the city will buy back the land at market value." Croft stormed out of the room. As he passed me, he whispered, "Eleanor Vance, this isn't over." Walking out of City Hall, Clara asked worriedly, "Eleanor, do you think he'll—" "Don't be afraid." I patted her hand. "The good will always prevail." The following days were busy but fulfilling. The renovation of the New Hope home progressed smoothly. Michael excelled at the construction site and was promoted to team leader. Leo and Maya performed together in a school play and won the award for Best Duo. But beneath the calm surface, an undercurrent was stirring. One night, I received an urgent call from Arthur. "Eleanor, there's been an accident. Michael was injured at the construction site and has been taken to the hospital." When I arrived at the hospital, Michael was already out of surgery. The doctor said a falling piece of equipment had injured his leg, but thankfully, it wasn't life-threatening. In the hospital room, Michael lay pale in his bed. He managed a weak smile when he saw me. "Mom, I'm okay." Mr. Thompson stood by, blaming himself. "It's all my fault. I didn't check the crane equipment properly." "The equipment was tampered with," Michael said suddenly. "I saw them. It was Derek Morgan's men." Arthur and I exchanged a look. Derek Morgan, Julian Croft's lackey. It seemed they hadn't given up. "You just focus on getting better," I said, tucking in Michael's blanket. "Leave the rest to me." Walking out of the room, I dialed a number I hadn't called in a long time. "Chief Williams, it's Eleanor Vance. There's something I need your help with." 3 days later, the local news broke a major story. Derek Morgan had been arrested in connection with several cases of corporate espionage and racketeering. Julian Croft had also been brought in for questioning. All of it had nothing to do with me. It was simply the police chief returning a favor from years ago when I helped him crack a major financial fraud case. After Michael was discharged, I had him stay in the guest room at my apartment. Every morning, Clara would bring Maya over for breakfast before taking the children to school. Leo was ecstatic, constantly sticking by his dad and little sister Maya. One weekend morning, I was watching Michael patiently teach the 2 children how to play chess while Clara prepared fruit in the kitchen. For a moment, I had the illusion that this was what a real family was supposed to feel like. "Mom," Michael suddenly looked up. "I'm thinking of trying to get back together with Jessica. Do you think it's possible?" I shook my head. "You can't unbreak a mirror. But you can be good friends and co-parent Leo." Michael looked down, disappointed. Clara came over with the fruit platter. "Mr. Vance, you can't force matters of the heart. The most important thing now is to become a better person." Michael looked at Clara and nodded thoughtfully. That evening, I got a call from Jessica. "Mom, I've started dating someone new. He's a colleague from my company. I'd like for you to meet him." I was a little surprised, but I agreed. "Of course." Why don't you bring him over for dinner this weekend? After hanging up, I walked out onto the balcony. The night sky was full of stars, and a cool breeze rustled through the leaves. Life is like the night sky, I thought. There is darkness, but there are always stars shining. Jessica's new boyfriend was named David, a technical manager at her company. On Saturday night, he stood at my door holding a fruit basket, looking slightly nervous. "Good evening, Mrs. Vance," he said with a bow. "Jessica talks about you all the time." I sized up the man in his early 30s. He had a crew cut, a square jaw, and clear eyes. When we shook hands, his palm was calloused. "Come in, dinner is almost ready." In the kitchen, Clara was finishing the last dish. Ever since I discovered her culinary talents, I had handed over the weekend kitchen duties to her. Maya and Leo were building with Legos in the living room. To my surprise, Michael had asked to be there to meet his ex-wife's new boyfriend. The atmosphere at the dinner table was a bit delicate, but generally pleasant. David was well-spoken and respectful, attentive to Jessica without being overbearing, and natural with Leo. "Uncle David, do you know how to fix computers?" Leo asked suddenly. "I do," David answered with a smile. "But I'm even better at fixing bicycles." "Really? My bike chain keeps falling off." Watching them chat happily, I saw a genuine glow of happiness in Jessica's eyes. Michael ate quietly, chiming in occasionally, but at least he was polite. After dinner, David offered to help with the dishes, but Clara waved him off. "You all go talk. I've got this." Jessica took David out to the balcony to look at the view, while Michael took the kids to the playroom. I stood in the kitchen doorway, watching Clara's busy back. "Thank you for all your hard work." "It's no trouble at all," Clara said, drying her hands. "Eleanor, David seems like a good man." "Yes, a lot better than Vanessa Croft," I said half-jokingly. Clara smiled. "And Michael's behavior was very mature tonight. He's growing up," I sighed. "Yes, but some lessons come at too high a price." After our guests had left, Michael came to talk to me. "Mom, I want to move out. Have you found a place?" "Yes, the company provides employee housing." He paused. "I want to really stand on my own 2 feet for once." I nodded. "You're always welcome to come back and see Leo." The next day, I took Leo and Maya to the New Hope home, which was still under renovation. Workers were painting the walls, and sunlight streamed through the newly installed floor-to-ceiling windows, filling the room with light. "Grandma, this place is so beautiful." Leo ran around the empty activity room, his voice echoing. Maya pointed to a small room. "Grandma Eleanor, can we put books in here?" "Of course, sweetie," I said, stroking her head. "There will be lots and lots of books here." Clara walked over with a blueprint. "Eleanor, the children's activity area will be finished next week, a week ahead of schedule." "Thank you for your hard work," I said, looking around. "This place will help so many children. Just like you helped us," Clara finished softly, her eyes full of gratitude. As we were leaving, we ran into the mayor and his entourage, who were there for an inspection. The mayor shook my hand warmly. "Mrs. Vance, your philanthropy is truly admirable. The New Hope home will be a model for our city." Reporters crowded around us, cameras flashing. The bright lights made me blink. Leo held my hand tightly. "Grandma, are you famous?" "No, sweetie. Grandma is just an ordinary person," I said, bending down to speak to him. "I just did what I thought was right." That night, after the news aired, my phone was flooded with congratulatory messages. The most surprising one was a text from Michael. "Mom, I'm proud of you." Those 5 simple words made tears stream down my face. A week later, the New Hope home held its grand opening ceremony. I made sure to invite Jessica and David, and Michael came from the construction site as well. At the ribbon-cutting ceremony, as Clara and I pulled the red silk ribbon, the crowd erupted in applause. "I declare the New Hope home officially open," the mayor announced. "This is our city's first non-profit organization dedicated to providing comprehensive support for children from single-parent families." After the ceremony, guests toured the various facilities: the counseling rooms, the after-school tutoring center, the parent-child activity area. The small library every corner was a testament to Clara's and my hard work. In the children's play area, I saw Leo and Maya playing with several children from the orphanage, their laughter echoing through the room. Michael and Jessica stood nearby. Though they kept their distance, their gazes both followed Leo with warmth. Eleanor, Clara came over. The list of the first group of families has been finalized. We have 12 children moving in next week. Good, I nodded. Are all the new counselors in place? Yes, all of them have degrees in psychology or education, Clara said, flipping through her folder. Oh, and Michael recommended someone the wife of one of his colleagues at the construction site. She's a single mother with a teaching certificate. I raised an eyebrow. Did you interview her? Yes. She's very down to earth, and her qualifications are excellent. Then hire her, I smiled. No harm in hiring someone you know if they're the right fit. As the ceremony was winding down, an unexpected guest arrived, Julian Croft. He was dressed to the nines, holding a bouquet of flowers, and walking towards me with a broad smile. Eleanor, congratulations. I thought I'd come and make a small donation. He handed me a check for $50,000. The crowd gasped, and the reporters immediately turned their cameras on us. I took the check and spoke into the microphone. Thank you for your donation, Mr. Croft. However, the New Hope Home has a policy that all donations must have their sources publicly disclosed. Mr. Croft, is this donation from Croft Enterprises, or is it a personal one? Julian Croft's smile froze. It was common knowledge that he was under investigation and his corporate accounts were frozen. This is a personal donation, of course, he said, forcing a smile. Then please provide your personal tax records, I said with a pleasant smile. We are very particular about the legality of our funding. Julian Croft's face turned livid. He snatched the check back and scurried away. The entire room burst into knowing laughter. After the event, Clara said worriedly, Eleanor, do you think he'll retaliate? He has enough of his own problems to deal with, I said, patting her hand. Don't worry. That evening, I held a small celebration dinner at my home. Clara, Maya, Jessica, David, Michael, and Leo were all there. The atmosphere was warm and joyful. Looking at this strange, blended family, I suddenly realized that blood is not the only thing that defines a family. Love and responsibility are what truly matter. Grandma, Leo held up his juice glass. I'd like to make a toast to you. Everyone laughed and raised their glasses. Michael stood up, his expression solemn. Mom, thank you for giving me a chance to start over. Jessica also stood up. Mom, thank you for always being so patient with my selfishness. Clara and Maya didn't say anything, but their eyes were shining with gratitude. My hand trembled slightly as I raised my glass. Thank you all for teaching me what a real family is. In that moment, all the scheming, the testing, the disappointment melted away, leaving only the purest warmth and affection. Before bed, I habitually checked my phone. There was a message from Arthur. Eleanor, the court has made its final ruling. The restructuring plan for Michael's company has been approved. He can retain 30% of the shares and start again. I replied, Tell him. He earned this himself. Putting down my phone, I walked out onto the balcony. The night sky was full of stars, like countless eyes witnessing the joys and sorrows of the world. I remembered my husband's last words to me. Eleanor, no matter what happens, always believe in the power of love. Oh, Frank, I whispered. I think I finally understand. The morning sun streamed through a gap in the curtains, waking me early. I saw over a dozen missed calls on my phone, all from Michael. Just as I was about to call him back, Arthur's number flashed on the screen. Eleanor, there's been trouble. Michael's been taken into custody by the police. I shot up in bed. What happened? Julian Croft reported him for commercial fraud. They say the evidence is irrefutable. Arthur's voice was tense. This time, it looks bad. I quickly got dressed. Get the best criminal defense attorney you can find. I'm on my way to the police station. At the station's waiting area, I found a pale-faced Jessica and a worried-looking David. The moment Jessica saw me, she broke down. Mom, they're saying Michael defrauded a bank of $300,000. He could get 10 years. Stay calm. Let's get the facts first, I said, patting her shoulder. I turned to David. Where's Leo? He's at school. Clara went to pick him and Maya up, David replied. I nodded to myself. This young man was reliable in a crisis. The lawyer arrived quickly. After speaking with Michael for half an hour, he came out to report. It's complicated. Michael did forge some documents to get a loan, but all the money went into Vanessa Croft's account. Now Vanessa is missing, and all the evidence points to him. Julian Croft is behind this, I said, clenching my fist. Is there any chance of bail? Difficult. The lawyer shook his head. The amount is too large, and they have him dead to rights. Just then, a police officer approached. Family of Michael Vance? He's asking to see his mother. In the interrogation room, Michael was in handcuffs, unshaven, his eyes bloodshot. Mom. His voice was a raw whisper. I really didn't know those documents were illegal. Vanessa said it was all standard procedure. When will you learn to take responsibility for your own choices? I said, forcing my voice to stay even. If Vanessa told you to jump off a bridge, would you do it? Michael lowered his head. It's too late for that now. No, it's not. I leaned forward. Tell me the absolute truth. Don't leave a single detail out. It turned out Vanessa, claiming to have an inside track at the bank, had convinced Michael to forge construction contracts and financial statements to secure a loan. Once the money was in his account, she had him transfer it to her for a high-yield investment. She said the money was for one of Julian Croft's deals, Michael suddenly remembered. And once, I overheard her on the phone. She mentioned the East Side project. My heart went cold. This was Julian Croft's master plan, killing two birds with one stone. He got his revenge on me and eliminated a competitor for the East Side project at the same time. After leaving the police station, I immediately called a team meeting. Arthur, Clara, Jessica, and David were all there. I even had Leo and Maya brought over, though I tried to shield them from the worry. The situation is clear, I said, pointing to a diagram on a whiteboard. Croft used Vanessa to manipulate Michael for both money and revenge. To save Michael, we need to find Vanessa and the money. Eleanor, Clara spoke up suddenly, I might have a lead. It turned out that while organizing the foundation's donation list, Clara had noticed a $5,000 donation from a Miss Croft. The phone number listed was disconnected, but bank records showed the money came from an overseas account. When was this? I asked urgently. Last Wednesday. I immediately contacted a friend at Interpol to trace the account. At the same time, Arthur prepared a new bail application. 3 days later, we had a breakthrough. My friend at Interpol confirmed the account belonged to Vanessa Croft's aunt. There had been a recent wire transfer of $50,000 to an account in Thailand. She's probably in Thailand, I told the lawyer. Can we use this to request a postponement of the trial? It's worth a shot. In court, our lawyer argued forcefully that the key witness, Vanessa Croft, was a fugitive and requested a postponement. The judge eventually agreed, granting a 2-month delay. Michael had dodged a prison sentence for now, but he was forbidden from leaving the country and had to report to the police station weekly. Walking out of the courthouse, he wept like a child. Mom, I'm so sorry. Don't be sorry yet, I said sternly. This isn't over. Back home, Leo ran into Michael's arms. Daddy, I missed you so much. Watching them embrace, Jessica cried silently. David thoughtfully handed her a tissue and said quietly, I'll go pick up Maya. You all need some time as a family. The young man's grace impressed me. Perhaps Jessica had truly found the right person this time. That night, I called a family meeting, including Clara and Maya. Michael recounted the entire scam in detail. Clara took notes, Jessica asked clarifying questions, and even Leo listened quietly. So, I summarized, to prove Michael was set up, we need 3 things. Proof of the connection between Vanessa and Julian Croft, the final destination of the money, and the original contracts. Clara suddenly said, Mr. Vance, do you have copies of the documents you signed? Michael shook his head. They were all on my company computer, which is impounded. No, Jessica interjected. You forgot. You always back everything up on a USB drive. Michael slapped his forehead. You're right. The drive is in my desk drawer at home. We rushed over to Jessica's apartment and found the drive. We plugged it into a laptop. Sure enough, it contained scanned copies of every document, including the suspicious contracts Vanessa had made him sign. These terms are obviously predatory, Arthur said after examining them. A professional would spot the illegal clauses immediately. We can argue Michael, as a layman, was deliberately misled. Over the next 2 weeks, we launched a multi-pronged attack. Arthur prepared the legal case. Clara used her IT skills to trace the money. I stayed in contact with my Interpol friend, and Michael cooperated with the police investigation. Our efforts paid off. Through a white hat hacker contact, Clara managed to trace the funds to a shell corporation owned by Julian Croft in the Cayman Islands. "I'm not sure if this is admissible as evidence," Clara said hesitantly. "It's enough for the police to open a formal investigation into Croft," I said, and immediately called Chief Williams. At the same time, we received good news from Thailand. Vanessa Croft had been arrested in Phuket and was being extradited. With all the evidence laid out before him, Julian Croft finally panicked. He offered a settlement through his lawyer. He would drop the charges and pay damages in exchange for immunity from prosecution for incitement. "No deal," I said flatly. "I want him to pay the price." In the end, faced with irrefutable evidence, both Julian Croft and Vanessa Croft were formally indicted. Michael, because he had acted without malicious intent and had been deceived, was sentenced to 300 hours of community service. On the day of the verdict, Michael cried in the courtroom. "Mom, thank you, I swear. I'll be a new man." We walked out of the courthouse into the bright sunshine. Jessica was holding Leo's hand. David was holding Maya's. Clara was carrying a briefcase, and Michael was pushing my wheelchair. I insisted on using it for dramatic effect. Our entire group stood on the steps like a real family, surrounded by a throng of reporters. "Mrs. Vance, are you satisfied with the verdict?" "Mr. Vance, do you have anything you'd like to say? What are the next plans for the New Hope home?" I raised a hand for silence. Today, justice has been served. But more importantly, my family has been tested and has emerged stronger. As for the future, I looked at each person beside me. Michael will be taking over the operational management of the New Hope home. Clara is being promoted to Secretary General of the Foundation. And as for Jessica and David, I paused. I look forward to hearing their good news soon. The reporters, sensing a scoop, immediately turned their cameras to Jessica and David. Jessica blushed and looked down, but David put his arm around her shoulder. "We're getting married next month." Leo cheered. "I get to be the ring bearer, and Maya can be the flower girl." Amid the joyful chaos, Michael suddenly knelt before me. "Mom, thank you for not giving up on me." I helped him to his feet. Silly boy. A mother never gives up on her child. David and Jessica's wedding was held on a sunny Saturday. Leo and Maya, dressed in adorable formal wear, walked down the aisle as the ring bearer and flower girl. Michael, representing the bride's family, sat in the front row, his expression calm and composed. I wore an elegant dress and sat in the family section, watching Jessica walk slowly towards David on her father's arm. She looked radiant in a simple, beautiful wedding gown, her face glowing with happiness. "She looks so beautiful," Clara whispered beside me. I patted her hand. "Yours will be the next wedding we attend." Clara blushed. "Eleanor? I'm not." "Just kidding," I smiled, changing the subject. "How are the preparations for the New Hope Home's open house next week?" "Everything's ready," Clara said, showing me photos on her phone. "The first 12 children have moved in, and the feedback has been wonderful." After the wedding, Michael came to talk to me. "Mom, I want to move into the New Hope home." "Why?" "My community service requires me to work there 40 hours a week. It would be more convenient," he paused. "And I want to do something meaningful with my life." I saw the resolve in his eyes and nodded. "Good." The next day, Clara and I helped Michael move into the employee dorms at the New Hope home. The room was simple but clean, and the window looked out over the children's playground. "This is nice," Michael said, setting down his bags. "I can see the children's smiling faces every day." A small, shy boy peeked into the room. "Mr. Vance, can you help me fix my bike?" Michael immediately stood up. "Of course. Come on, show me." Watching them walk away together, Clara said softly, "Eleanor, Michael has really changed." "Yes," I sighed. Sometimes, a person has to hit rock bottom before they can start to climb back up. The day of the open house arrived. Representatives from the government, corporations, and the media crowded into the facility to see the miracle that had been accomplished in just 1 month. Michael, as the operations manager, wore a simple white shirt and slacks and confidently introduced the various facilities and services. He was professional and passionate, a world away from the arrogant young man he used to be. Our goal is not just to provide material assistance, but more importantly, to rebuild the mental health and self-confidence of children from single-parent families, he said, pointing to a photo wall. This is our wishing tree. Every child can write down a wish, and volunteers help make it come true. The wall was covered with colorful notes. I want to learn to draw. I wish my mom wasn't so tired. I want an encyclopedia. In the most prominent spot was a note written by Leo and Maya together. We wish all the kids could be happy. After the tour, the mayor personally presented Michael with an award for outstanding contribution to community service. From the audience, Jessica, David, Leo, Maya, and I applauded wildly, while Clara secretly wiped away a tear. That night, we held a small celebration in the New Hope Homes cafeteria. The children put on a talent show they had organized themselves. Michael was pulled on stage to sing a song. He was terribly off-key, but the room was filled with joy. Eleanor, Clara handed me a cup of tea. The foundation's budget for the second half of the year is done. Please take a look when you have a chance. You have my full confidence. Your decision is final, I said, taking the cup. By the way, Maya's birthday is next month. What are you planning? She wants to go to the new zoo, Clara said, looking a little troubled. But that's a Saturday, the same day as the open house. I'll arrange it, I said, patting her hand. You and Maya deserve a perfect birthday. It was late. The guests had left. I stood at the entrance of the New Hope home, watching Michael see off the last guest. He leaned against the doorframe, tired but satisfied. Tired? I walked over. Yeah. But fulfilled. He smiled. Mom, one of the parents told me today that since coming here, her daughter has finally started smiling again. I reached up and straightened his collar. You've done well. Better than you know. Michael suddenly hugged me. Mom, thank you. Thank you for not giving up on me. I patted his back, just as I had when he was a little boy. Silly boy. On the drive home, Leo fell asleep in my arms. From the passenger seat, Jessica turned around. Mom, your birthday is next week. How do you want to celebrate? Something simple is fine, I said, watching the city lights flash by. Just a family dinner. No way, David chimed in. It's your 60th. We have to celebrate properly. Exactly, Jessica agreed. Let's have a party at the New Hope home and invite all the children. I just smiled and shook my head at them. On my birthday, the New Hope home was beautifully decorated. Not only were my family and friends there, but also dozens of children and their parents, and representatives from the families we had helped. Michael emceed the event. Clara coordinated everything. Jessica and David greeted guests, and Leo and Maya played games with the other children. I was surrounded by a sea of people, accepting their heartfelt wishes. The most surprising part of the evening was an awards ceremony. They had created an Eleanor Vance Philanthropy Award, and I was to be its first recipient. Mom, Michael said from the stage, you taught me what true love and responsibility are. You deserve this award more than anyone. I walked onto the stage and looked at all the familiar faces in the audience. My redeemed son, my daughter-in-law who had found true love, my reliable son-in-law, the loyal and capable Clara, my sweet grandchildren, and all the families who had found hope again because of our work. Thank you, everyone. My voice was choked with emotion. This award doesn't belong to me alone. It belongs to every single one of us here today. Love is not about giving, but about sharing. Family is not about blood, but about connection. The applause was deafening. Leo and Maya ran up to give me flowers. The cameras flashed, capturing this perfect moment of happiness. After the party, I walked alone in the garden of the New Hope home. The night was dark, the stars were bright, and a gentle breeze rustled the leaves. Clara quietly approached. Eleanor, you must be tired. Let me take you home. Let's sit for a while, I said, patting the bench beside me. Clara, there's something I want to discuss with you. Of course. I'm getting older, and I want to start handing over the reins of the foundation, I said, looking into her eyes. Would you be willing to take over as chairman? Clara's eyes widened. Eleanor, I couldn't possibly. I'm not capable. You are more capable than you think, I said, taking her hand. Not right away, of course. I'll give you 2 years to prepare. Clara's eyes welled with tears. Eleanor, I don't know what to say. Just say yes. I smiled. Yes, she nodded, her voice thick with emotion. I'll work hard. I won't let you down. In the distance, Michael and Leo were chasing each other across the lawn. Jessica and David were walking hand in hand, and Maya was crouching by a flower bed, watching a butterfly. The night air was filled with the faint scent of flowers. I took a deep breath, savoring this hard-won peace and happiness. At 60 years old, I should have been settling into a quiet retirement. But I knew that our story was just beginning.